What next for Syria? Before their triumphant dash to Damascus, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, led by Abu Mohammed al-Julani, were designated a terrorist organisation by the UN Security Council. The primary task, therefore, of the new administration is to manage perception both within and outside the country. The new government has repeatedly promised to protect the quarter of the population which does not share its Sunni Muslim loyalties. Whether it sticks by that commitment is the real unknown.
We don't want these violence incidents or sectarian tension to emerge in Syria because we might descend into a full-scale civil war. We also need now to pressure the international community in order to force the new leadership to create avenues for Syrian societies to establish political parties for a plural and more representative governance in the future.
This inquiry was presented by me, Tanya Beckett, produced by Ben Cooper, researched by Evie Yabsley, and edited by Tara McDermott. The studio manager was Toby James.
That was the inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio, your morning show. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. You're with CBC. So yesterday morning, Abby always whispers in my ear right when we get on air. He's like, it's -2. That was like yesterday morning. He just said it's -14. To which I said, take that back. But we are returning to cold temperatures here in Winnipeg today. Mainly cloudy and -14 to begin, but fear not, we're going to go to a high of -4. But we will return to real cold next week sometime for sure. So thanks for joining us. We're on air with the morning show till 8:37 a.m. If you have a problem on the commute, the person to call is Corey Funk, who's back in the show today. He also is directing, and that number is 788-3093. Good morning, Corey. Also, good morning officially to Abby Adeyemi, our technical producer, who is in our control room today. Abby covers weather on the show as well. And Kevin Ipatebo is also sitting with Abby. Good morning, Kev. Kev's our YouTube producer and giving you a wave there on YouTube if you like to watch the show as you're listening. Let's get to Heather Welsh. She's here also ahead of 6 with our local news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the Right to Housing Coalition is puzzled by opposition from the Granite Curling Club to an affordable housing plan. The club has started a petition to try to stop a city rezoning meeting, which would allow an 11-story apartment building to be built on the club's parking lot. We're going to hear from a housing advocate who supports the plan coming up in our next news at 6:30. As well, hockey teams and groups using the West Kildonan Arena are going to have to find ice time elsewhere. The arena has been closed until further notice over structural concerns after a piece of machinery working outside the building hit an exterior wall on Monday. Now, I should say the daycare in the community center was not affected. It remains open. But we'll hear more about what happened there in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So we also have a little bit of that story coming up in the first hour of our program. It's so hard to get ice time anywhere, right? So a big loss, and for other reasons as well. So we'll hear more. In addition, we're going to look at a new report in the first hour of the show that looks at social well-being, financial security, and health, and specifically looks at it in older Canadians. So we'll hear more about that. And then a little bit later in the first hour, we're going to talk about Health Canada's new consultation, which asks Canadians for their thoughts on allowing advance requests for medical assistance in dying. Stay with us.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
In the new movie I'm Still Here, Fernanda Torres plays Eunice Paiva, whose husband was tortured and killed by Brazil's military dictatorship. She'll be here to tell you the responsibility she feels to Eunice and to our country's future in telling this story.
It's like a woman who always fights the right fight.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Canada's military police are under investigation. An Ontario Superior Court judge found members tampered with evidence, showed bias, and acted beyond the scope of their jurisdiction. The judge says the misconduct was so egregious the court cannot continue to hear the case of an armed forces member charged with sexual assault. Nicole Williams has the story.
Never on this scale.
It's a case unlike any other attorney Austin Corbett has ever defended. His client, a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, charged with assaulting and sexually assaulting his ex-wife, a military reservist. Those charges now stayed because of military police misconduct during the investigation.
There was a lot missing. It took sort of months of work and repeated re-requests to slowly sort of piece together a lot of the missing pieces.
Military police started their investigation into allegations of assault in 2021. In a recent Superior Court decision, the judge says during that time they showed bias in favor of the complainant. They withheld and destroyed evidence, the judge calling investigators' misconduct egregious. Michelle Drapeau is an expert in military law.
I'm asking myself, how many other cases have these individuals been involved with?
Retired legal officer Rory Fowler says this investigation suggests what's needed is a public inquiry into military police operations.
So what this case represents is an object example of a failure over the course of many years to hold investigators accountable for misconduct.
The Office of the Canadian Forces Provost Marshal oversees military police in this country. It says it respects the judge's decision made in this case, and its Office of Professional Standards has launched its own investigation into what happened. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
At least 7 people are dead in a stampede in northern India. It happened during the Kumbh Mela festival, the world's largest religious gathering. Tens of millions of people became caught up in a massive crush. Several have been injured. The CBC South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has the latest.
The chaos erupted in the early hours of Wednesday. A large crowd surged forward towards the waters considered holy, and hundreds of Hindu devotees scrambled to break away from the crush of people. Police rushed to the scene with officers carrying the injured out on stretchers. We were walking calmly and then there was so much pushing and shoving, Sarojini says, breaking into tears. There was no chance of escaping. My family was hurt. People kept stepping on us, this woman says, outside a temporary hospital. I made it out safely, but my mother has died. The main crowd surge happened where the Ganges and Yamuna rivers meet, a spot considered holy for devout Hindus, on the biggest day of the world's largest religious festival, with 100 million people expected to attend to take a bath in the waters in the belief it washes away their sins. Hours after the stampede, officials were still tiptoeing around a death toll. India's Prime Minister offered condolences for those who lost loved ones. But the state's Chief Minister, Yogi Adityanath, only said he hoped the injured would recover. He asked people to not believe in any negative rumors. Crowd management and safety was a big question heading into this year's Kumbh Mela, a 45-day festival of faith and devotion that was always expected to break attendance records. The last Kumbh also had a stampede on its biggest day, with 42 people killed in 2013. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
The streets of Goma are quiet today. Rwandan-backed M23 rebels are in control of eastern Congo's largest city, and they have seized its airport. Gunfire can be heard in the distance, but this man who lives in Goma says things are calmer now.
It was a bit frightening with the gunshots we were hearing. We were a bit scared, but as far as we could tell, it's already stabilized, despite the fact that there's no power. They've cut off our connection, so we're cut off from the world.
International concerns are growing over the deterioration of humanitarian situations in Goma. Now that rebels control the airport, aid may not make it into the region. Thousands of people have been forced to leave their homes. Hospitals in the area are overwhelmed with the injured after days of fighting. In just 3 days, it will be February 1st, the day U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to slap a 25% tariff on Canadian goods. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is traveling to Washington today to try to stop that. And Canada's premiers are about to meet with the Prime Minister to work on a backup plan. Janice McGregor is in our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, what do the premiers have in mind?
Marcia, the premiers met amongst themselves yesterday to coordinate, and sources told CBC News that while they discussed the idea of a tariff stimulus package, it's been just a hypothetical conversation so far. Nothing has been presented to the premiers yet. Donald Trump's threats are real. His concrete actions have yet to materialize. So there won't be precise numbers for anyone until people see what's hitting them. But BC Premier David Eby yesterday said both levels of government are reworking their fiscal plans to get ready.
British Columbia should know that we are preparing for the worst, and we're going to be in a position to support them alongside the federal government.
There are some things in the short term the federal government can do, even while Parliament's prorogued. Employment insurance, for example, that's your first line of defense in the event of mass layoffs. But if things erupt into retaliatory strikes and the federal books begin to balloon with extra tariff revenue, the House of Commons would need to approve how those billions are then divvied up across affected industries and workers. Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc was talking about that yesterday on our Calgary Colleagues West of Centre podcast.
The idea that Parliament should come together to support workers, businesses, regions of the country, absolutely. And any responsible government would want to be in a position to do that as quickly as possible.
But Janice, Parliament will still be prorogued on February 1st when this could all happen.
That's right. Hypothetically, if a tariff war escalates fast, your politicians are in a pickle here, so long as who's in charge remains in transition. Yesterday, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh appeared to be signaling there could be an openness to holding off on defeating the Liberal government just long enough to pass a relief package.
I've maintained my position that I'll be voting against the government at the earliest opportunity. If the Liberals are serious, though, about a plan that should be put in place to support workers, call the opposition leaders together.
The Bloc, however, remains wary this could be a trick to let the Liberals stay in power a bit longer. Conservatives wouldn't even answer a question about whether they'd support a relief package, continuing instead to accuse the Liberals of proroguing the House for selfish reasons.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Economists expect a quarter-point rate cut from the Bank of Canada later this morning. The first interest rate announcement of the year comes in just under 3 hours' time. If the central bank does announce its sixth straight cut, its key interest rate would drop to 3%. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will be in the hot seat today for his Senate confirmation hearing. Kennedy is U.S. President Donald Trump's pick to be Health and Human Services Secretary. It is one of the most powerful posts in the cabinet. But the hearing is not expected to be easy. Kennedy has been controversial for years. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. And Richard, what can we expect during today's hearing?
Yeah, I think we can expect some very pointed questions from Democrats and Republicans. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is one of the few Trump nominees who stoked anger from both parties. Democrats criticize his skepticism of vaccines against COVID, polio, measles, his potential conflicts of interest, while Republicans criticize his pro-choice views on abortion. And now Kennedy's own family. His cousin Caroline Kennedy made a rare public plea urging the Senate to deny his confirmation, calling him a predator who relishes in despair and violence. Take a listen.
Bobby is addicted to attention and power. Bobby preys on the desperation of parents of sick children, vaccinating his own kids while building a following hypocritically discouraging other parents from vaccinating theirs.
Now, more than 15,000 doctors signed a letter protesting Kennedy's nomination, saying he's not qualified to lead one of the most influential posts in government. Now, if he's confirmed as Health and Human Services Secretary, Kennedy would oversee powerful government agencies like the Center for Disease Control, the Food and Drug Administration, and the National Institutes of Health.
What are the chances he gets confirmed today?
Yeah, Kennedy's fate ultimately rests with Senate Republicans. He can only afford to lose 3 of their votes, presuming all Democrats unite against him. Now, so far, no Republican has publicly opposed him, but I suspect we'll get a better sense of their intentions by their questions at the confirmation hearing later today.
Thank you, Richard.
You bet.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC. We're live downtown, where it's minus 14. Thanks for joining us. Weather update in just a moment. Also, we're going to be talking about skating and where it might be harder to get ice time this winter. We're going to talk about why one Winnipeg arena is temporarily closing its doors. In addition to other stories that are national versus local, we're going to look at a new report that looks at social well-being, also financial security and health. All of this in older Canadians, so stay tuned. We'll have that conversation coming up. And then at 6:40, we'll hear about Health Canada's new consultation. They're asking Canadians for your thoughts on allowing advance requests for medical assistance in dying or MAID. So stay tuned. With more local news, though, stick around in a moment. Heather Wells with our headlines. And here she is now, live from our news center. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, documents show a Winnipeg surgeon has been banned from working at Grace Hospital. A confidential, respectful workplace decision leaked to CBC News says Dr. David Ames was accused of sexually harassing a nurse at the hospital about a year ago. Ames has denied the allegations. We'll hear more about the story coming up. And Clear Lake cottage owners are facing a new reality. Zebra mussels are in the lake to stay. Parks Canada says it is not feasible to get rid of the mussels from the lake in Riding Mountain National Park. And cottage owners now getting used to the new reality and not totally unhappy about it. We'll hear why in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's going on in this forecast, shall we? Good morning, Abby.
Good morning, Mas. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Not bad. It feels like we're in the teens, though. It's going to be another mild day.
Yeah, it'll be melty later.
Melty later, though some cloudy conditions will come to that with temperatures warming to around -3, -5 in the south and central parts of the province today, though the north will be much colder with snow and wind chill, making it feel as cold as -46 in Churchill. If we look at conditions in Winnipeg at this time, it is -15. Clear conditions we're seeing outside. Today, we should expect some clouds to roll in. We'll see some light breeze this afternoon. It will be feeling chilly this morning with that wind chill feeling like -24, though we warm up to -4 by the afternoon period. And then tonight, we'll see some clear skies by midnight. Temperatures dropping to -8. Similar conditions for Westman, the Parkland, Pimna, and the Interlake regions. Temperatures will be milder today, but the north, we're seeing, the wind chill making it feel as cold as -30 and -46 in Thompson and Churchill. For Winnipeg right now, -15. And it's clear outside.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk's return to the airwaves. Good morning, sir.
Hello. Yes, so far, actually, no real major issues out there that I've seen on the highways or here on the road. Sidewalks were not too slippery, actually, this morning. I thought maybe it was with this freeze thaw might be of an issue. But if something is an issue for out there on the road, sidewalks, highways, trails, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, I mentioned that new report looking at the lives of older Canadians, and it turns out that only 1 in 3 working Canadians aged 50 and older believe that they will be able to afford to retire when they want to. That's one finding in the annual report from the National Institute on Aging. And to have a look at the other findings and the other challenges that Canadians continue to face, we have reached Natalie Ichaschik. She's the program manager of survey research at the National Institute on Aging. She's also the lead author of their 2024 Aging in Canada survey. And she joins us this morning. Hi there.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. So how do you describe the focus of this report just before we dig into some more findings?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a large annual survey of aging in Canada that we conduct, and it's now in its 3rd year. So we first launched the project in 2022. And with this survey, what we try to capture is what the overall experience of aging in Canada is like. And we do so by focusing on 3 different dimensions or buckets of issues that affect older adults and that affect aging, which are social well-being, financial security, and health and independence. And by looking at issues across these 3 dimensions, we really get a fulsome picture of what it's like to be an older adult or someone approaching older age in Canada. And with this, we hope to get the evidence and the data that policymakers need to be able to implement the kinds of policies that we need to adequately support our growing number of seniors.
So let's walk right into this financial security stat that I mentioned in the introduction that, only 1 in 3 working Canadians age 50 and older believe they'll be able to afford to retire when they want to. What else did you hear around financial security?
Well, one of the most startling statistics that came out of this year's survey is just how unprepared Canadians 50 and older are for retirement. Our survey revealed a troubling reality, which is that while retirement is a common goal for Canadians 50 and older, many lack any retirement savings at all, let alone savings to support a secure retirement. So when we asked those who had not yet retired, but who were planning on doing so, how much they had saved for retirement in terms of dollars invested or put away, 1 in 4 said that they had saved $5,000 or less. And so therefore, it becomes much less surprising that when we asked them if they felt that they could afford to retire when they want, we saw that only 1 in 3 felt that they could afford to retire when they would like to.
Where are we seeing the gaps in terms of healthcare?
So we've been looking at this issue of access to healthcare since our first survey in 2022. And what we've seen consistently across all 3 years is that only about 2/3 of Canadians 50 and older say that they're able to get the healthcare services and treatments that they need all or most of the time, but 1 in 3 struggle to access necessary care. And so unfortunately, those numbers just haven't shifted since we first started collecting data on the issue in 2022. And so what that tells us is that despite, recent government investments and initiatives aimed at improving Canada's healthcare systems, those changes just haven't kept pace with the growing demand for care or translated into better access, at least not for older adults.
I want to ask some of the social factors that you looked at. So often we hear about isolation and loneliness being a big issue for people who are older. What did you find when you looked at the state of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of our bucket on social well-being, we looked at both these issues because while related, they are also distinct. So social isolation, is the objective experience of lacking social connections, whereas loneliness is more of the internal or subjective experience one has when they feel that they're lacking connections. But unfortunately, what we found is that both of these remain issues our older adults are facing. So in terms of social isolation, we found that 43% of Canadians 50 and older were experiencing or at risk of experiencing social isolation, which was actually the highest proportion recorded since beginning our survey. And in terms of loneliness, we found again that the majority of Canadians 50 and older experienced some degree of loneliness, with about 20% being very lonely and another 40% being somewhat lonely. And again, concerningly, both these issues have stayed largely the same since beginning our survey, showing that there have been no improvements in, helping our older population get past these issues.
So in our last couple of minutes here, Natalie, what do we do with it? I mean, where are the opportunities to make changes in the lives of people, in your view?
Well, supporting our aging population will require that we evolve our policies and programs to keep pace with the changing demands of our population. And although there isn't one single answer, policy realignment will have to happen across a number of different sectors. One immediate change is really improving capacity within the healthcare system. So by far, the most common barrier Canadians 50 and older reported in terms of not being able to access healthcare was the inability to get appointments, but also canceled or delayed appointments or troubles with getting referrals were very common barriers faced. So improving capacity within the healthcare system is one, but then another clear solution is focusing on the community. So the future of aging isn't in institutions, it's in our communities. We know that older adults want to age at home. They want to remain in their communities. We know it's also more cost effective for the system. So finding a way to transfer care from institutions to the community to help older adults stay there.
Natalie, thank you very much for walking us through your research. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Lots that we can build on there, obviously, and ask you if you're listening, if what resonates with you, if you're 50 and over. Natalie Chaschik has been with us, Program Manager of Survey Research at the National Institute on Aging. Now, when it comes to combating loneliness, I thought we might play a couple listener lines here because yesterday we were asking you all about whether or not you ever chat with a stranger, why or why not. And here's a couple calls we got.
Morning, Marcy. Diane Lindbergh. I sure enjoyed your program of people talking to other people. I'm like that myself. Sometimes I thought maybe there's something wrong with me because I'll stop and say hi to people and start talking. But I think it's just your personality. Working at Deer Lodge, you just talk to everybody. It's so nice to talk to the residents that are bedridden and they don't get many visitors, and the people that come in from hip surgery and all kinds of knee surgery, they're just there for a short time, and they really appreciate people coming and talking to them.
Hi there, it's Ed calling for Toulon. Just as nice, meet people and say a thank you. When you say it in nice language, they smile. And what I like about when you say thank you, it's a very nice smile.
Good morning, this is Wayne calling. Two reasons why I interact with people in public. One of them is when I'm at the Loblaws food chain stores, and if I see a parent at the checkout with a lot of groceries, I just make them aware of the Flash Food app where they can get food for their children at 50% off. And of course, the second reason that I interact with people is dad jokes. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.
Well, now we're all looking forward to you giving us some dad jokes while we're standing in line at the grocery store or something. If you want to read more of the reasons, I found it quite uplifting, actually, reading all the reasons that you shared on our Facebook page, and then listening to those calls about why you interact with people, with strangers, chat with people. If you want to feel uplifted and you are online, you can check out my Marcy Marcusa Facebook page, which acts as a show page during the show, and you'll find the thread. There's a big yellow banner, you can't miss it, where I ask the question. 109 people weighing in, and most people saying that they see more benefit than downsides to chatting with people.
CBC Music Live at Massey Hall, the most iconic music venue in Canada. An absolute milestone in the careers of musicians who stand on the historic stage. And you have a front row seat. New episodes now available, including highlights from the 2024 Polaris Music Prize Gala featuring two-time winner Jeremy Dutcher.
I have unending gratitude to this music community.
CBC Music Live at Massey Hall. Watch now on CBC Gem.
6:22 a.m. minus 15 in Winnipeg. It is Wednesday morning. Thanks for joining us here on CBC's Information Radio. With the team here, I'm Marcy Marcusa. The band's back together. We're not working on a single or anything, but we've got a pretty good show coming for you here this morning. Corey Funk is directing, and Abby Adiyemi behind the controls. Kevin Nipatebo producing YouTube and our stream this morning. Well, next, let's talk about something Heather mentioned. Winnipeg's West Kildonan Arena is going to be down West Kildonan area, is going to be down an arena for the foreseeable future, actually. That's because West Kildonan Memorial Community Center's arena is temporarily closing its doors after experiencing damage on the building's exterior. A structural engineer found concerns with the integrity of the wall where the damage occurred. I promise I'll get this story out. Big concern, though, for people, right? As Heather mentioned, the daycare is still open, but the arena will be closed. The center announced yesterday, as a result, all hockey practices and games will be canceled now until further notice. Brian Howen is the president of the Community Center's Volunteer Board. He spoke a bit more about this with CBC's Josh Crabb.
The engineering from the city determined that we had an accident with one of the machinery that came working on the outside, and it banged into the corner of the arena and caused some structural damage to the interior of one corner of the arena. It was, a notice from the city that for temporary shutdown till they can analyze it and fix the problem. That's all.
I guess how surprised were you when you got this news of this temporary closure?
Well, we're not happy, of course. No, we're running an arena, and for the local people, the kids, and everything. Yeah.
And how busy is that arena when it isn't temporarily closed?
Well, it's busy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're losing. We have our games and practices and everything else. Yeah.
So, any idea what it'll take to get it back up and running?
That's up to the city.
Okay.
That's the city controls that.
Okay.
Yeah. So we just run it.
I mean, what impact does this have then on those teams that?
Well, use
it at time is hard to
shut
come
down
by.
any kind of operation we shut down, but they're making we're hopefully it'll be on a short-term situation, so we don't want to get into that kind of thing.
So no idea how long this might last then.
No idea. It's in the hands of the city. But don't forget, you've got to understand it just happened.
And how are people handling that?
I imagine nobody's happy when you cut down anything. But people do understand.
And were there any issues with the structure that you're aware of before the incident on Friday, or?
No, not really. No.
Okay.
And you got to remember it's an old arena.
Yeah.
Just like all the city arenas are old. As far as I'm concerned, we just have to. They're doing their due diligence, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a city arena. It's owned by the city, and they handle it we informed them the issue, and they came down and they made a determination.
That's Brian Hewen, president of the West Kildonan Memorial Community Center's volunteer board, reacting to news that their arena is going to be down for the foreseeable future. The daycare, though, is open, to be clear. So it's going to be a challenge, though. It's really hard to get ice time around the city, as you might know. 6:26 a.m. is the time right now. Well, as far as just walking around town, you're going to have a little bit of icy conditions out there. It's minus 15 right now. We will, though, later maybe even see a bit of slush. We won't get as warm as yesterday, but today's high in Winnipeg will be minus 4. If you need us on your Wednesday morning commute, by the way, you can pass along calls to the commuter line. Corey Funk is in and taking care of the commute, and 788-3093 is where you reach him. Well, a bit of music before our local news this morning. This is a tune from Jade Turner, who's a multi-award-winning singer-songwriter. We played Jade in the show lots of times. She's a member of Miss Poesic Cree Nation. This is her third solo album, Breathe, that's coming out in just a couple of days, actually, February 7th. And here's a tune that's on it. It's called You're Only Nice When I'm Leaving.
There's flowers on the table, a card that says I love you. The dishes are done, dinner is made, and the table set nicely for two. I wish this was the first time I've seen a setting like this, but I've seen it before. I know the drill, and I know that I must resist. 'Cause you're only nice when I'm leaving, and that's not fair to me. You say the right things and pull me back in, then it's back to the same damn things. And I admit that it worked for a while now, but I can't keep doing this to me. 'Cause you're only nice when I'm leaving, but that's not enough for me. You say, darling, I'm sorry. I swear this time I'll change. And you give me that look, take my hands and promise it won't be the same. Part of me wants to believe you more than I'd like to admit, but I can't keep believing the same things over and over again. 'Cause you're only nice when I'm leaving, and that's not fair to me. You say the right things and pull me back in, then it's back to the same damn things. And I admit that it worked for a while now, but I can't keep doing this to me. 'Cause you're only nice when I'm leaving, but that's not enough for me. Yeah, you're only nice when I'm leaving, but this time I choose me.
Jade Turner, and You're Only Nice When I'm Leaving. Once again, her third studio album is coming out in days, February 7th. That's coming up fast. Well, before that, coming up even faster is February 1st. Everyone talking about it because of U.S. President Donald Trump and his threat to impose tariffs. We will talk about that in some context this morning with Kristalee Ramlakan in our business news coming up. In addition, Boeing has been facing a lot of challenges lately, to say the least, but its stock has actually jumped. So we're going to talk to Kristalee about what is behind that. If you're having any problems on your morning commute this morning, whether you're walking or biking or driving, or if it's nice, you just want to call and talk about the great conditions, the person to reach is Corey Funk. Our commuter line is 204-788-3093. So you can reach Corey at that number. Stay with us. We also have just confirmed that still ahead in the program this morning, we're going to be hearing more about some harrowing moments for some people in Winnipeg that were involved on scene of trying to revive people who had been close to overdose. This is overnight in Winnipeg, from what I understand. We're still gathering details. So we will confirm all of that. Sunday in Winnipeg. We will confirm all of that. And after 7 o'clock, we're going to have an interview about what happened. Right now, it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's a surprising minus 15 right now. It doesn't feel quite that cold, but that's where we're at, and we will warm up all the way to minus 4 today under a mostly cloudy sky. A Winnipeg surgeon has been banned from working at Grace Hospital. That is according to confidential documents obtained by CBC News. Dr. David Ames was accused of sexually harassing a nurse at the hospital about a year ago. Ames denied the allegations made in a respectful workplace complaint, but an arbitrator hearing the case found it was more likely than not he made the alleged comments. In October, the arbitrator decided Ames could not work at Grace Hospital. Ames was previously suspended in 2022 after sending sexually explicit texts to a patient. Arthur Schaefer is an ethics professor at the University of Manitoba. He says the medical profession has no room for repeated misbehavior.
Protection of the public and protection of healthcare colleagues, fellow healthcare workers, should surely be a very high priority.
Ames lawyers and the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority both declined comment. Manitoba PC leadership candidate Wally Dowdrich says the Conservative vote in this province runs the risk of splitting up. Speaking at a PC leadership forum last night in Portage la Prairie, the Churchill hotelier suggests the party could suffer a schism if it chooses a more progressive leader.
If we don't keep it conservative, guess what? There's going to be 1 or 2 or 3 other parties that are going to start up, and we're going to see conservative votes splintering all over the place, and we won't get in for the next 20 years.
Dowdrich is running for leader against Fort White MLA Obby Khan. The party chooses its next leader on April 26th. With the Trump administration's February 1st tariff date fast approaching, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau meets again today with the premiers. It's expected the First Ministers will be looking to finalize Canada's response plan, which, along with retaliatory tariffs, could also include a stimulus package aimed at supporting Canadian businesses that will be directly affected by any American trade action. Also today, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is in Washington for talks with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Cottage owners in Clear Lake are disappointed zebra mussels are there to stay. Parks Canada admits it is not feasible to get rid of the invasive species in the lake at Riding Mountain National Park. The federal agency had banned watercraft on the lake last summer as part of an effort to stop the spread. But now it says zebra mussels have been detected in other parts of the lake. Kyle Basillo is a board member with the Clear Lake Cabin Association.
Unfortunately, zebra mussels are there, but I think this is the best decision is to live with them now rather than still trying to pretend you're going to fight the war that you're not going to win.
Parks Canada says it plans to allow watercraft on Clear Lake this year on a one boat, one lake basis. Basillo expects a lot of cabin owners will be happy they can have their boats in the lake again. The Right to Housing Coalition is puzzled by opposition from the Granite Curling Club on an affordable housing plan. The club has started a petition trying to stop a city rezoning meeting, which would allow an 11-story apartment building to be built on the club's parking lot. Lindsay McBain, a housing advocate, supports the plan, which has 30 units with rent geared to income.
It does seem like it's going to really meet the need of the lowest income people in our city. And that's where we always have a gap. The private market can't provide the sort of really, truly affordable units.
The University of Winnipeg Community Renewal Corporation is behind this project. McBain says a plan to share revenue with the curling club should be considered a win for all parties involved. Well, hockey teams and groups using the West Kildonan Arena are going to have to find ice time somewhere else. The arena has been closed until further notice over structural concerns. A piece of machinery working outside the building struck an exterior wall this week. An engineer determined the arena should stay closed for now. Brian Hewen is president of the Community Center's board.
They're doing their due diligence, and that's it. It's a city arena. It's owned by the city, and they handle it. We informed them. the issue, and they came down and they made a determination.
Ewan says it'll be up to the city to make repairs. Now, the city says the daycare in West Kildonan Community Centre was not affected and remains open. Well, 2 goals from this guy.
I've seen a lot of good shooters, guys at quick release, but he's...
Scores! Kyle Connor with a second to go in the period, and it's 3-1.
Scott Arniel trying to take over Kyle Connor's moment there. That was Kyle Connor in the second period on TSN. His 2 goals helped to lift the Jets to a 4-1 victory over the Montreal Canadiens. This after a dismal performance by the team in the first period. Now, Coach Scott Arniel.
I've seen a lot of good shooters, guys at quick release, but he's in the top 5 for me of some of the best at shooting that puck.
Make that 4 straight wins now for the Winnipeg Jets. In fact, the Jets are the first team to 35 wins this season in the NHL. And Winnipeg now is tied with the Washington Capitals at the top of the NHL standings. Next up, Winnipeg heads to Boston to face the Bruins tomorrow night. You can find more Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I heard that, just to reiterate a bit more what you're saying there, Heather, I didn't see the game last night, but I heard the first period you were watching said it was kind of stinky. It was like, ooh.
Yeah, I didn't even recognize that team. And really, you saw Patrick Laine out there and he and his whole team against the Jets. Every time Mark Scheifele touched the puck, there were so many boos. But yeah, it wasn't a great first period, but they really, to their credit, came back strong in the second.
Yeah, it looked like a different team, you were saying. So good. This is the time of year when you want that, right?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's Heather Wells in our news center. She also characterized the day pretty well, I think, where Abby, where she was saying it's minus 15, but it does kind of read a bit warmer this morning.
Yeah, it reads a bit warmer today. Mild conditions we're going to be seeing in the southern regions with temperatures warming close to -5 in most of the regions down south. Let's take her from Winnipeg right now. We're looking at temperatures at -15. It is mainly clear outside. If you look up, you'd find out you can still spot some stars there. Today, we'll see some clouds roll in with gentle breeze. The high for Winnipeg will get to -4 today. Though, as you start your day, you step outside, you're going to feel that chill. The wind chill makes it feel like -24 this morning. Then we'll see some clear conditions tonight, dropping to -8. Similar conditions we're looking at in the Pembina Valley region. It will be a mainly cloudy day with highs around -3, but current conditions we're looking at -10. In Westman, Brandon sitting at -15 at this time. Mainly cloudy skies, we're expecting a high of -2 for folks in Brandon. In the Parkland region, Dauphin sitting at -6 and cloudy at this time. Expect a high of -2, and more cloud cover will roll in as you get into the day. In the Interlake region, today will be mainly cloudy with light breeze. We'll see highs in that region around -5, but currently Gimli is sitting at -8. The wind chill this morning feels like -27. In the Pamphlet Flon, temperatures hovering near -9, -10. We will see a mainly cloudy day there. Light snow is in the forecast. High also gets to -5. Snowfall is likely to continue into tonight with about 2 to 4 centimeters accumulation once the system moves out. And then we move north to Thompson, where we're seeing light snow at this time. Temperatures around -22. Expect a high of -17 today, though the wind chill feels like -29 this morning. Then further north in Churchill, we're seeing some ice crystals there with temperatures around -32. The wind chill this morning is in the range of -46. So you want to take care of frostbite in minutes. So we're looking at a mix of sunny day for tomorrow, and we might even spot some tonight. But down south in this part of the province, it's going to be mild cloud cover, light breeze. Compared to the north, where we see that extreme wind chill for Churchill at -46. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at -15. We warm up to -4.
I was curious this morning, you guys. I was taking my life in my hands because I'm wearing my Blundstones.
Oh.
And they're terrible when it's icy out. They're really not great when it's icy out.
No, they're not.
But It was pretty good this morning. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad to hear that we're going to be warming up because that'll help.
Yeah, I had to slip the other day wearing Blundstones, carrying my toddler.
Ooh.
I know.
Isn't that the worst feeling?
Both went down.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's okay?
Yes, I was nervous. His leg kind of went under my back, between my back and the ground. I was like terrified. He was kind of rattled. I was like, is his leg okay? He was fine.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
They're kind of like Play-Doh, so it's at that age, it's very beneficial.
I keep telling myself the kids are pretty parent-proof overall.
They are. But we aren't as adults, so choose your footwear wisely.
Yes, exactly.
All right, let's get into what's happening on the commute course.
Yeah, at least on my run in this morning, I had low grippier shoes and Blundstones on, and it wasn't too bad on the sidewalks. I haven't heard of any major issues on the roads or highways, anything like that. Let's knock on whether that's going to remain the case for the morning. But if something's going on the bike lanes, on the trails, on the roads, highways, sidewalks, give me a call. I'll let folks know what you're seeing out there. The number, 204-788-3093.
And I just want to reiterate something, because obviously Corey directs the show. You hear him on the air here doing traffic, but Corey also is active during the show. So if stories are moving or developing, or we're hearing about things, then he's the one getting people on the line. So we have a live guest coming in after 7 o'clock here that's going to be updating us on this terrible story of what happened on Sunday.
That's right. Levi Foy of Sunshine House, Executive Director, they were part of a response to a number of overdoses that happened in a really short window of time on Sunday. So we're going to hear the story from Levi about what happened and what concerns they have about the drug that's behind it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Corey.
Thank you.
So Corey's just confirmed that. So we will talk to Levi after 7 o'clock about what went on. Next on the show, it is time for business news. Crystal Lee Ramlakan joins us live via Zoom. Good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So U.S. President Donald Trump has been threatening to implement these tariffs as soon as this weekend, right? That's February 1st already. What's the latest? Where are we at?
Yeah, well, Trump's new press secretary has been asked about tariffs many times this week. Here's what she had to say.
He was asked and answered this question this past weekend when he took a lot of questions from the press, and he said that the February 1st date for Canada and Mexico still holds.
So yes, the White House is still saying we're going to see those tariffs this Saturday. And Trump has repeatedly said that there will be 25% tariffs on all imports from Canada and Mexico over what he calls concerns about the trade deficit along with border issues. Now, Canadian officials have said that the federal government will respond with countermeasures should these tariffs actually materialize. And also, a new report from TD says the tariffs would severely disrupt the Canadian automotive sector, where trade is actually balanced. So Trump has suggested that U.S. automakers should build their vehicles all just in Detroit. And the report says that the tariffs and any retaliation from Canada and Mexico would mean higher prices, and it would cost upwards of $50 billion to move production back to the U.S., and that would push prices higher still. So the wider potential fallout from a trade war would likely limit how long it would last politically. But yeah, the report says that the auto sector is likely facing a prolonged period of trade uncertainty and potential trade disruptions.
Let's go to another story here. Boeing has been facing a lot of challenges lately, to say the least, but its stock has jumped. What's behind that?
Yeah, so the company says it's making progress on increasing plane production, but the company just recorded its biggest annual loss in 4 years. It lost almost $12 billion. So this is after a recent strike, and the company has entered the crosshairs of regulators and customers following a series of missteps. After banking record high profits in the 2010s, Boeing has bled more than $30 billion since 2019 after 2 fatal crashes of its best-selling 737 MAX jet, which triggered production quality and safety concerns. Also worries that it had misled regulators during the plane's certification process. And the pandemic further squeezed the company. And of course, there was that blowout of that panel midair on a nearly new 737 MAX last January. So yeah, why did the shares go up? So here's John Graddick, who is a faculty lecturer at McGill who teaches aviation management, for more on this.
Boeing has lost value in terms of its stock market performance as a result of all of the trials and tribulations that it's been going through. What you're seeing in today's stock price is a future look by investors to say, well, if I invest in Boeing today, I'm investing at a low point in the shares. The shares have got no place to go but up because of what they expect the White House and Trump's policies will have on the Boeing company.
Now, Boeing did not report guidance for this year, but has previously told investors it plans to generate $10 billion in annual free cash flow by this year or next year, but that goal is widely expected to be delayed still.
And finally, big changes are going to be rolling out this week at Starbucks.
Yeah, that's right. So several policies are returning as the new CEO tries to reverse the decline in sales and traffic. So condiment bars are back after they were taken away during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Baristas will return to handwriting customers' names on their cups using Sharpies. And both of these changes are part of Starbucks' plan to reboot the coffee house vibe that has certainly diminished in recent years. It's also an acknowledgement that the largest coffee chain in the world went too far in overloading baristas with extra tasks. Also, free refills on some For Here orders are expanding to all paying customers. That perk was once reserved just for members of its loyalty program. So they can be served in a ceramic mug or a clean personal cup, but that's only for hot or iced coffee or tea orders. No fancy drinks like lattes or refreshers. Also, Starbucks, as we talked about before, is not going to let anyone hang out or use its restrooms without making a purchase anymore as well.
So you can look forward to having your name misspelled on the cup once again, Crystalie.
Yeah, that's right.
I bet they never get yours right.
No, they never do. I don't blame them. It's not spelled the way it's pronounced, but yes, this is the curse that I've been
it's a beautiful
born
name,
with.
What's going on in the markets?
So in Europe, markets are on the rise. Germany is up, the UK is up, France is down. In Asia, markets are recovering while several Asia-Pacific markets are closed for the Lunar New Year holiday. So Japan is up, Shanghai is down, Hong Kong is up. Oil is down 69 cents to 73.08 US per barrel. Gold is down $4.82 to $2,758.70 US per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.15 of a cent to 69.3 cents US.
All right. Thanks a lot, Crystalie. Talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. Thanks, Marcy.
Crystalie Ramlakan at our business desk. Well, stay with us because in a couple of minutes, we're going to hear more about the final report from the Commission looking into foreign interference in our democracy. It's been released, so we're going to go through some of the details with security expert Stephanie Carvin, who has been digging through all of these findings. So that's coming up in a few minutes from now. Right now, though, speaking of federal findings, the federal government's looking to improve the laws around medical assistance in dying or MAID. It became legal in Canada in June of 2016, and as it stands, the person asking for MAID must have the capacity to consent, and they cannot ask before they are eligible or they want to receive it. Now Health Canada is doing a survey of Canadians about advance requests for MAID. Helen Long is CEO of Dying with Dignity Canada. She explains why Health Canada is conducting the survey.
We already know that based on Ipsos polling we did in 2024, and I will say numbers that are consistent over the last few years, 83% of people across Canada support the idea of an advance request for MAID. It's always important for levels of government to hear from people across the country, and I think it really brings a lot of value when Canadians are able to contribute their views and personal experience and insights that sometimes experts and organizations don't have the same view of or the same understanding of. So, I think the vast majority of Canadians are on board with this idea. It's important that their views are reflected in the discussion. An advance request would let someone make a written request for MAID before or after a diagnosis. I think Health Canada right now is talking about after a diagnosis of a capacity diminishing disease. So think about someone with Alzheimer's or dementia. That person, while they still have the ability to make healthcare decisions, could put in writing the time at which they would like to have a MAID request administered, even if they've lost capacity. So it's like a future opportunity to ask for MAID before you lose capacity. And it certainly wouldn't be carte blanche. There's already quite a few safeguards in place. One of the best is the fact that two independent assessors have to determine that the person has met the eligibility criteria. So, with an advance request, what we would expect would happen is this document would be prepared. There's likely going to be a check in from time to time to ensure that's still what the person wants. When the person reaches what they're, in Quebec, for example, they have something called a trusted third person, but it could be your substitute decision maker. It could be a family member or a friend, someone who says to the clinician, hey, I think the time that was described has come. Two assessors would then evaluate that. The request has to be in writing. It has to be witnessed. There's a number of safeguards that would ensure that the person has met the criteria. And all of those would be in addition to the original criteria for Maine. So that you have an irremediable medical condition, that you are suffering or you've reached the point of suffering that you describe, and that suffering can be physical or psychological. So all of the existing safeguards, and then I'm sure there will be, as the processes kind of work through, I'm sure there will likely be one or two more that are added specifically for this.
That's Helen Long, the CEO of Dying with Dignity Canada. Now, CBC News did request Health Canada for an interview about the consultation, but the department declined. It's 9 minutes now to 7 o'clock, and next in the show, as I mentioned, the long-awaited report about foreign election meddling has now been released. Justice Marie-Josée Hogue has led the Foreign Interference Commission, tasked with understanding the extent of the problem and coming up with the recommendations to protect our democracy. After more than 16 months, it's 800 pages long, and there are 51 recommendations. Stephanie Carvin's been going over what the commission had to say. She's associate professor at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University and a former national security analyst with CSIS, and with us now. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, with a report this extensive and long, I'm actually almost going to hand this interview over to you, because what do you think is what's the most significant thing to come out of this that we need to know?
So I think you're right. It's 800 pages, but let me just preface this by saying the report is very readable. Don't be intimidated by the size of it, right? Yes, it's not the cozy murder mystery maybe you want to read before you go to bed. But if you are curious to the findings, she's using very plain language. She clearly wants Canadians to read this report. And I think, she succeeded in making it accessible to most people. So it's out there. You can read it. And even if you don't want to read the full 800 pages, which, trust me, I get, she has a very good summary at the beginning that you can read and get the gist of the report.
And the gist is it's bad but fixable, the problem. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's just it. And actually, the key message I think she is trying to send is that, there is a real threat out there, and it's not great. The situation is pretty gloomy, but our institutions are robust. And Canadians should continue to have confidence in our electoral system. I think that's really important. There's been a lot of concerns about the 2019-2021 election. She says those elections were free and fair. But by and large, there are problems, but Canadians should continue to have confidence. Where there does remain to be issues, and where she does spend a lot of her time on issues like transnational repression, a lot on disinformation, which is not something I expected, but is interesting. And then finally, some of the problems institutionally and the kind of problems coordinating and the slowness to act to some of these threats she's pointing out as well. So that was kind of my main takeaway.
Mm-hmm. Can you speak to something that's in there that's described as, quote, traitors among our parliamentarians? What did Justice Hogue have to say about it?
Yeah, this is something I was really looking forward to her assessment of, which is basically, I don't know if your listeners remember, but back in the summer, which does feel like 10,000 years ago now, there was a report released by the National Security Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, which suggested that up to 6 MPs were, quote, wittingly and unwittingly engaged in activities that were deemed threats to the security of Canada, which is really spicy language, honestly, and it caused a lot of panic, and I can understand why. It's pretty dramatic claim. She's throwing a lot of cold water on this, right? She's basically looked at this report and said, look, there is actually no list of names, that, there are no traitors, but she does say, look, some of the conduct here was not good. She actually describes the conduct as troubling. And, there were clear ethical violations, that people were acting in ways where they should have known better, but didn't act in those ways, that perhaps they should have. And so, but she's like, this means that, political parties and political leaders need to do more to basically protect their staff. But, Canadians by and large should be comforted by the fact that there is no, clandestine plot to undermine democracy from within.
Of the recommendations, what do you think are the most doable?
So it's interesting. She does put, again, 51 recommendations that are out there. She herself says that she thinks half of them could be put in place pretty much immediately. And she points to certain things like the Liberal leader nomination race that's ongoing right now. And I mean, to be clear, she says, look, I didn't cover this in my report, but she's like, I've noticed that the Liberal Party, for example, has put in rules where the members have to prove that they're either a permanent resident or a citizen in order to vote in that nomination. And she's like, other parties could do this as well. She also talks about kind of just creating more flexibility in the system, giving some of the institutions that are responsible for, responding to some to instances of foreign interference in our elections, giving them more flexibility in terms of how they communicate what the threats are. The Security to Elections Task Force, or the SITE Task Force it's called, she notes that, it only really has one blunt instrument, which is going public with any of the threats that it sees. And she's like, there's a lot more steps that it could take, and there's a lot more flexibility we could give them in order to kind of respond to some of these concerns. And we could do that. And that doesn't actually require us to do anything dramatic. So I think that's another important thing as well.
Just last, how successful do you think the report's going to be in reassuring Canadians who may have lost confidence in our democratic institutions?
This remains to be seen. I think one of my lingering concerns about the conversations we've been having is what I would call foreign interference. That basically that there's been this doubt planted about the security and safety and viability of our elections. And I think once that doubt has taken hold, it's very hard to remove. I do believe that Justice Oga has done everything she can to reassure Canadians that our elections do remain free and fair, and I think most Canadians will probably feel that way. But I think this is going to be a lingering doubt that we're going to continue to have online and social media. She spent a lot of time talking about disinformation, where these rumors kind of live. And so I'm not sure. I do worry that, Canadians, the best tool we have to fight foreign interference is awareness of foreign interference. But I do worry that if Canadians are learning the wrong lessons here, that this actually could cause more damage than actually help in the future.
Stephanie, thanks very much for your time.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
So as Stephanie mentioned, this is accessible to you to read through, but just looking at the top line of this report, Stephanie Carvin's been with us, Associate Professor at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University and former National Security Analyst with CSIS this morning to start the conversation. Heather Wells is here with headlines and other stories. Good morning.
Good morning. The Right to Housing Coalition is puzzled by opposition from the Granite Curling Club to an affordable housing plan. The club has started a petition to try to stop a city rezoning meeting, which would allow an 11-story apartment building to be built on the club's parking lot. We'll hear more about that coming up. And Clear Lake cottage owners are facing a new reality. Zebra mussels are in the lake to stay. Parks Canada says it is not feasible to get rid of the mussels from the lake in Riding Mountain National Park. It had banned boats and other watercraft last summer trying to stop the spread, but officials now say the zebra mussels were detected in other parts of Clear Lake. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
The commute, pretty good so far, 788-3093 if you have an update for Corey. Minus 15 in Winnipeg right now. Our high's minus 4. Going to be a cloudy day today. Winds will be south around 20 at noon. They're calm this morning, which is nice because yesterday the wind was so cold. Coming up on the program, we have a serious interview. Live in studio, Levi Foy will be with us, Executive Director of Sunshine House, because on Sunday, toxic drugs, Levi says, led 10 people in the city to overdose within just a few hours. They were responding to all of these things. And we'll hear more about what exactly happened and also what drug they believe is at the heart of what happened here as well. So stay tuned. That's a live interview after 7. Also coming up in the next hour of the program, can buying Canadian help push back on economic threats from the States? That question's been asked a lot, but CBC's Jim Agapito asked Manitobans about your shopping habits and whether or not you're thinking about this when you go to the till. Plus, we'll hear more about the zebra mussels, as Heather mentioned, in Clear Lake, and we'll have another point of view from a business owner coming up with a full interview. Stay with us.
Today on The Current.
This is CBC, ici Radio-Canada.
The role and the future of the CBC are under debate. CBC has a new president who will have to tackle this and decide how the public broadcaster can serve as public and whether it will survive. The new CBC president, Marie-Philippe Bouchard, coming up on Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. The Bank of Canada will announce its latest decision on interest rates next hour. Economists expect the central bank will cut rates by a further quarter point. But as our senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong tells us, the decision comes as the bank tries to navigate a deeply uncertain economic time.
Canada's been treating us very unfairly on trade.
Speaking to reporters on Air Force One, Donald Trump unleashes his usual attack on Canada, ending with the now familiar become a state or face tariffs. Another tariff deadline looms this weekend. If you think it's making your head spin, imagine being a central banker.
I can't think of a time with more uncertainty about the path for monetary policy.
That's Royce Mendez, the head of macro strategy at Desjardins Capital Markets. He expects the Bank of Canada will cut by another 25 basis points this morning, pointing out the volatility isn't just due to international tariffs.
Just looking at domestic fundamentals, the Canadian economy needs lower interest rates. We're set for the mortgage renewal wall to start biting on the economy in the spring of this year.
More than 1.2 million mortgages will come due this year. Most of those loans were taken out during the depths of the pandemic when rates were at historic lows. The unemployment rate is high, the economy has slowed, and now tariffs loom on the horizon. Even back in December, Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem was raising concerns about how cloudy the future looked.
Unfortunately, it looks more uncertain than it did before the pandemic.
So this morning's decision is important, but where the bank sees the economy heading in the months ahead may prove even more consequential. So keep an eye on its forecast released today as well. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
The Team Canada tariff response is ramping up again. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is traveling to Washington, D.C. She will meet with the new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Her message, a 25% tariff on Canadian goods will hurt both countries, whether it's on February 1st or a later date. But the premiers want a safety net in case those tariffs happen anyway. They want a stimulus package for affected businesses and workers. Sources say Ottawa is working on a multi-million-dollar package. The premiers are meeting with the Prime Minister this morning to push for details. A celebration in northern India has turned deadly. People are rushed into a hospital after a stampede in Uttar Pradesh. Tens of millions of people were attending the Kumbh Mela festival when the crowd crush began. At least a dozen people have been confirmed dead, and one report says at least 39 bodies have been taken to the morgue. India's government has yet to confirm an exact number. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi offering his condolences to the families of those killed. The Kumbh Mela festival is considered to be the largest religious gathering in the world, drawing hundreds of millions of people every 12 years. In Ukraine's Kherson region, the human cost of drone warfare is becoming all too clear. Local officials say dozens of people have been killed. Hundreds more have been injured by drone attacks. And human rights investigators are accusing Russia of deliberately targeting civilians. The CBC's Briar Stewart was in the region tracking the story.
Sitting on a bench at a temporary housing complex in Ukraine's Kherson region, 46-year-old Dmitro, who only wanted to be identified by his first name for security reasons, tells CBC News about the moment last October when he left a gas station in his village. Could you hear the drum? Yes, of course, he says. The drone dropped an explosive and Dimitro was injured by shrapnel, which pierced his shoulder and temple. Local Kherson officials say since the summer, there's been a dramatic increase in the number of drone attacks, particularly in neighborhoods near the Dnipro River. Russian forces on the other side have targeted people in vehicles and on bicycles. Many of the videos taken from the drone's cameras have been posted online on pro-Russian social media channels.
It is absolutely clear that what we are talking about is an abusive campaign, a campaign that is targeting civilians.
Belkis Vile is an associate director at Human Rights Watch and is part of a team investigating the drone attacks in Kherson.
The people that we spoke to who've had to leave their homes, they suspected that the aim of these tactics was to clear out these neighborhoods.
Russian officials and these pro-Russian social media accounts say they aren't targeting civilians, but they also say that the city of Kherson belongs to Russia and vow to one day be in control of it again. Briar Stewart, CBC News in the Kherson region.
Australian police say they have foiled a planned anti-Semitic attack. Here's the Premier of New South Wales, Chris Minns.
There's only one way of calling it out, and that is terrorism. This would strike terror into the community, particularly the Jewish community, and it must be met with the full resources of the government.
Police say they found a caravan packed with explosives near Sydney. They suspect it was going to be used in a mass casualty event. Multiple people have been arrested, but police did not disclose how many were charged. Australia has seen a rise in attacks on synagogues, buildings, and cars since the beginning of the Israel-Hamas war. Just over a year ago, the federal government created a visa program for people wanting to leave Gaza. But the latest numbers from Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada show only a fraction of applicants have arrived. CBC's Emma Weller has more.
Ola Al-Reyes stands in her kitchen in Ottawa, surrounded by her family from Gaza. Just months ago, her brother Wassim El-Reyes, his wife and 5 kids were fleeing the war, at times living in a tent. His sister translates.
It was a very rough time during the war. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. It will be your last day or not.
El-Reyes' family immigrated through the temporary resident visa program that opened last January. It's for extended family members of Palestinian Canadians. His family of 29 applied, but only 16 have arrived so far.
Many people, they're waiting for this moment to have the dream for them to come to Canada.
There's 5,000 spots available under the program, and it's almost full. But as of January 4th, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada says only 616 have arrived in Canada. When applying, IRCC says people in Gaza have to cross into Egypt to complete their biometrics, which was extremely difficult until recently. IRCC says the controls around the border are the primary holdup. Jamie Liu is a law professor at the University of Ottawa.
It is quite telling, disturbing, alarming, problematic that only a few people have been able to benefit from this program.
She says now's the time for the government to act quickly to get people out because nobody knows how long the ceasefire may last. Emma Weller, CBC News, Ottawa.
This is the first full day of campaigning in Ontario's snap election. Voters go to the polls next month. It is a gamble for Progressive Conservative leader Doug Ford, but he insists he needs a stronger mandate to face the threat of U.S. tariffs. Thomas Daigle reports.
Ontario Progressive Conservative leader Doug Ford is hitting the campaign trail after weeks spent pitching himself as a champion for Canada in the face of proposed U.S. tariffs.
Folks, I can't stress enough how devastating these tariffs will be.
But his opponents, like Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie, say by triggering this early vote, Ford is only looking out for himself.
There is not one other premier that is suggesting that this is the right time to go to an election to secure their jobs.
Observers suspect Ford is aiming to secure a third straight majority government before Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives potentially sweep to power in Ottawa. The Ontario PC leader is also facing pressure from controversies, including a lakeside mega spa project, plus the hundreds of millions spent on rushing booze into corner stores and the Greenbelt land development scandal under police investigation. Marit Stiles leads the province's New Democrats.
I think Ontarians aren't going to buy this from the Conservative government again. You had your chance.
Polls put Ford's party well ahead of his opponents, but it's still early, with Ontario's voting day now officially scheduled for February 27th. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Toronto.
People around the world are celebrating the Lunar New Year today. A lion dance is performed at a celebration in Sydney, Australia. This is the year of the snake. The snake symbolizes transformation and refreshed energy. The new year coincides with the first new moon of the lunar calendar. Chinese and other Asian communities consider the 15-day festival to be the most important of the year. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. 7:10 AM is your current time, minus 15 is your temperature. Well, we have serious news that we're learning about this morning, and we're going to hear what happened on Sunday when 10 people in our city overdosed within 45 minutes. There was response to this. We're going to talk to Sunshine House this half hour, the executive director. His teams were trying to keep up with saving people's lives. Said they've never dealt with this before in terms of this number of people. And we'll hear more about the drug that they believe is involved here. So stay tuned. We'll hear more about that story. Also this hour on the program, we will also hear, you've heard this on World Report from a national point of view, but we're going to hear from a Winnipeg point of view what people are thinking about how easy it is to buy Canadian. So stay tuned. With other stories, Heather Wells is in with news headlines this Wednesday morning. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, documents show a Winnipeg surgeon has been banned from working at Grace Hospital. A confidential, respectful workplace decision leaked to CBC News says Dr. David Ames was accused of sexually harassing a nurse at that hospital about a year ago. Ames has denied the allegations. We'll hear more coming up. And hockey teams and groups using the West Kildonan Arena are going to have to find ice time elsewhere. The arena's been closed until further notice over structural concerns. A piece of machinery working outside the building hit an exterior wall this week, and an engineer determined the arena should stay closed for now. I should say the daycare in that community center there was not affected, and it does remain open. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
To the forecast now. Abby Adiemi.
Good morning. Once again, it's going to be a mild and cloudy day in the southern part of the province. We're looking at temperatures warming to -3, -5 in the southern and central parts of the province, but much colder up north with Churchill feeling like -46 this morning. Right now, Winnipeg, -14, clear outside. Later today, we should see some clouds roll in. A light breeze will come with that. It feels like -24 this morning. However, we warm up to -4.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
And Corey Funk is here to update our commute.
Fairly smooth commute so far this morning. Did get a call from Thomas on the commuter line who's driving on Highway 16. He said it's overall pretty good, but there's actually the odd icy patch here and there, so just maybe drive a little bit slower than usual just in case you hit one of those icy patches. Other than that, if you do see something going on, if you're walking, bike, and driving, you see something going on, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
So let's get started with understanding what happened in our community on Sunday. And I just want to outline this for people. So we're about to talk about the fact that what advocates believe was a toxic drug supply led to 10 people overdosing within 45 minutes of each other on Sunday in Winnipeg. Now, think about that. It's almost 7:15. That means 10 people would OD before it's like 8 o'clock this morning. Staff at Sunshine House's mobile unit were at the front line of their response. Levi Foy is Sunshine House's executive director and has actually made his way into our CBC studio live this morning. We appreciate you being here, Levi. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, I want to begin by asking about your staff. So I just want to make sure I will get there but what happened on Sunday? Like, what time was it when you first were alerted? How did this all unfold?
So I was alerted almost, and this is a testament to our team, kind of in the midst of things happening. And so from from how it was recounted to me, because I was dealing with another emergency elsewhere, from how things were recounted to me, we had one community member or one relative who was experiencing a toxic drug event or an overdose, and as they were kind of finishing up there, another person went down at the same, like almost immediately. And then with that one, we had to call 911 because of our internal protocols. Once we started administering any naloxone doses past 2, that's when we engaged with Winnipeg Fire and Paramedic Services. And on that second call, we had they had arrived, and by the time they had arrived, that individual had come to, but then another person had experienced the same event, and then it was just a cascade from there, and so.
One after another.
And we had 5 right on our site, and then there was others within a 1 to 2 block vicinity.
So 1 to 2 blocks of where?
We were located at the corner of Main and Logan.
Main and Logan.
Yeah.
So these are people within the 1 to 2 block vicinity that are literally on the street.
That are on
right?
the street, or.
And at the site, you said the 5 people that you guys were tending to that were sort of like you helped one, and then they revived another person, 2 doses. You're calling 911. I mean, you can't imagine how frantic this is. But your site, meaning your mobile unit that goes out.
Yeah. So it's an RV.
Yeah. So how did you manage to help everyone? Like, how many staff did you have there, and who was then supporting? There were, I understand, paramedics too, right?
So out of our team, we had at that time we had five staff, and we had 3 peers. And so the peers were the folks that community members typically come to when there's an event kind of outside of the area because they're familiar with the neighborhood, and then we were kind of the first responders, and then. For most of them, and then the paramedics would be able to jump in after we were able to kind of, get people into recovery position or what it looked like. So,
what time of day was this?
This was in the middle of the afternoon.
Middle of the afternoon, like before noon, afternoon.
It was between 2 and around 3 o'clock.
Okay,
was when things wrapped up.
What would have happened had you not had the paramedics able to show up as they did?
So if our team wasn't there, and if the paramedics weren't able to show up in a timely fashion, we would be looking at a lot worse outcomes. We'd be looking at outcomes probably never before seen in an overdose prevention site or a supervised consumption site in Canada, and that would be potentially death or people being transported to hospital. And from what I understand, nobody was transferred to an emergency room that day, so everyone did their best to kind of contain the disaster that was unfolding, and community really came together, and WFPS came together to ensure that it wasn't causing any additional stresses on systems. And so it's really important to think of it kind of as an incident, and then how our teams were able to kind of and how these support services can really have a broader impact, even if you're not being impacted in that moment, it can still have a broader impact if we didn't exist, and if other services can't be built. Then,
so,
yeah.
10 people within 45 minutes. How is your staff doing?
So they had a training the next day, and everyone showed up. And when we had a couple of staff who kind of joined in, they saw things unfolding in the group chat, and they just went down to the site immediately on their day off. And everybody. They have a tremendous ability to support one another, and so they all came to the training the next day, and I'll see who shows up today. But
you mentioned that that the people all survived. The 10 people who were in overdose situations survived. Can you share anything about the men, women, their ages? Can you share anything about that? Or
we prefer not to share any of that type of information. Just
yeah, fair enough. I'm wondering if you can put this in context for us in terms of, obviously you've said you haven't responded to a mass overdose event like this before. What would be the next comparable? Like, how does this compare to what you would respond to?
So a really atypical day at the site would be anything more than kind of 2 events, but there's lots of days or lots of weeks where we'll go and we won't see any kind of overdose events. So there's no real regularity to it because we don't have a regulated supply in Manitoba. So we're working with a lot of a lot of different challenges. I think other comparables, we know that some of our partners in the neighborhood will see multiple types of these events, maybe each shift. And so
like this, 10 people in 45 minutes?
Not in 45 minutes, but
multiple
events over a day or over a specific shift time. So,
what do you understand about the drug behind the overdoses?
There's not much that we know that some of we were able to test a few of the samples on the site there through the drug checking machine. The substance that's commonly labeled as down is a very difficult substance to work with because it's often just a concoction of different downer type substances. And so when we're working with down, it can be a little bit, it's always a little bit tricky. So that's why we always encourage folks to go slow. If we're not available, to make sure that they're using with friends or that they're using services like NORS.
And in the past, CBC's reported on like pink and purple down, which would be, I believe, help me here, fentanyl, but laced with other toxicity, right? That makes it more, this was not that. This was a different substance?
Well, it can be, it's usually, it has, very usually it has an opioid, and a lot of the times it'll also have a benzodiazepine. And so what makes...
The Free Press is reporting this was brown down. I'm just trying to understand what that is. And if that's a correct report or not.
That is a correct report. And so, but we don't really know fully what's in it because it's like, it's not a substance that's produced in the same way that other substances are, where you can kind of be like, this is what this is.
So this all speaks to toxic drug supply, though. You talked about testing the drugs on site. Where are we at in terms of what more is needed to be able to test things before something like this happens? And how much do you think the safe consumption site that's proposed for Point Douglason is going to be coming and built will maybe prevent, or how will it affect things like this, like what happened on Sunday?
We're seeing more and more services around drug checking be available, within the city of Winnipeg, and I think that's really great because in those spaces they can do things that our team isn't capable of doing on an RV, and I think that also leads us into kind of what the impact on a community level of what a supervised consumption site can look like, because within that facility there will be built-in healthcare providers, and there'll be more kind of supports available for individuals. If they experience this type of event, and B, there'll be follow-ups available right there and right on the site that we can't necessarily do in a parking lot in an RV. Giving people a nice, warm, dry place to sit. When you're working with 10 people, you can only fit 3 or 4 people on the RV. So it's like everyone who was recovering from there kind of had to go off into the world. And I think also in a supervised consumption site, you be able to have more people within a contained environment, which is something that has been a growing challenge for our team because we're seeing such a rise in people utilizing the service. It becomes very challenging to operate out of an RV in a parking lot most of the days. So,
how concerned are you that something like this is going to happen again? You've already said that it's happening all the time. You said, I think, every shift, but something similar, right? Less scale. But how concerned are you that this is, is this I shouldn't label it a new reality, but I'm just trying to frame this for people because it sounds really intense and terrible.
The hopeful part of me is that it doesn't happen again. How likely is it to happen again? Probably fairly likely that'll happen. We always experience, because we're an outdoor facility, so we'll always experience an uptick of people utilizing the service when weather changes because more people are coming out and more people are able to do that. I'm concerned that it might happen again and we don't have the kind of things built in time. I'm also concerned for other places that are constantly dealing with these types, like our partners, our community partners, other service organizations, who are seeing these types of things happen in their facilities and maybe not being as equipped as we are to kind of deal with this because this is our job, right?
How is the community doing at the community of houseless people, like who are on the street, as you say, the neighbors, like how are people doing after that? Because you have staff and paramedics responding, then you have the people that obviously OD'd, but then you have their friends, you have their peers, you have people at the street level. Do you have a sense of the impact of something like this?
That's right. It's really important to kind of put human faces, because these are people who are well connected to one another and who are oftentimes considered our family. I think from when we had to leave that day and kind of the secondhand reports that I got, people were feeling grateful, that their friend, that they didn't have to attend to them. And people were also feeling grateful that their friends and their relatives were able to kind of see the rest of the day out, sort of thing.
Really appreciate you coming in to tell us what happened here in our city, and also to explain the responses and what's needed to do better moving forward in terms of the services and growing things that can be provided that might help in your view. Appreciate having you here.
Thanks for having me.
Levi Foy is Sunshine House's executive director, talking about responding, his team, part of a response to 10 people who overdosed within 45 minutes on Sunday. They are all still alive. It is 7:25 a.m. right now on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app and YouTube. We got to switch gears because it's time for sports. So I'm just going to send it over to Scott Reguer, who's going to talk about the Jets, because I obviously have just had a serious interview, Scott. I'm going to absorb that and let you talk about the good news last night.
Yeah, for sure. The Jets with a 4-1 victory over the Habs in Montreal last night, Marcy, which means Winnipeg's on a 4-game winning streak. Connor Hellebuck once again stood tall in the net, especially in the first period where he faced over double the amount of shots Winnipeg managed. Kyle Connor with a couple of goals, and not to be outdone, line mate Mark Scheifele, who found the back of the net. Aside from scoring, not hard to notice when Scheifele was on the ice. Every time he touched the puck, the Montreal faithful rained down a chorus of boos. This, of course, dates back to the playoff series these teams played in the COVID bubble. Some will remember that controversial hit Scheifele laid at the end of the series with the Winnipeg net empty. Montreal forward Jake Evans scored. Scheifele raced back to defend and body-checked Evans after he scored. Scheifele suspended for that hit. That did not, however, appear to matter to the Montreal fans. Scheifele was asked about the crowd noise last night.
You don't even really hear it, to be honest. This is it's a fantastic rink to play in. Obviously a lot of history, with the Canadians. So, it's you kind of drown it out. Once in a while, if there's no pressure on you and you hear it a little bit, you laugh a little bit. But obviously it's just it was a fantastic win by us, and move on to the next one.
That next one would be tomorrow night in Boston against the Bruins, where the Jets will try to make it 5 straight wins.
Let's move to a developing story in world cricket next, Scott.
Tomorrow, Marcy, in Melbourne, Australia, a team called Cricket Without Borders is going to face the women's squad from Afghanistan. The Afghan team has not played together since being forced to flee their country when the Taliban government took over 3 years ago. Team captain Firuza Amiri says her side will represent millions of women back home who have been denied their rights.
It's going to be a very big step that we are taking toward our journey of cricket, because the ICC is ignored as a national team that represents Afghanistan. It doesn't matter if we are Afghan 11. Our hope is only represent Afghanistan. And women outside and inside Afghanistan look at us as a representative of Afghanistan.
You heard Amiri suggest the ICC, that's the International Cricket Council, has ignored them. That is a reference to the governing body's rules, which state that all countries under its umbrella must have men's and women's teams. Amiri says despite this, the ICC has done little to nothing to support their team. Tomorrow's exhibition match against Cricket Without Borders, it's being put on with the support of the Australian government.
Finally, it's a big day in Champions League soccer.
Yeah, a huge day, Marcy, in club football's most prestigious tournament. The winner of the European Champions League is widely considered the best team on earth. And today we'll find out which clubs make it through to the knockout phase. Only a couple of clubs have already done so. Those are Liverpool and Barcelona. The remainder, well, they'll be determined this afternoon with kickoffs all at the same time. This is a new format, which will ensure there aren't any shenanigans like, say, match fixing going on. The club with perhaps the most to lose today, Marcy, is Manchester City. They face Belgium's Club Brugge today, and they must win if they're going to advance. The Champions League top prize of $40 million, well, that probably looks pretty good to City at the moment. Off the field, you see, the club faces huge sanctions for past financial irregularities. Analysts believe that City will soon receive a 40-point deduction in the English Premiership, which would see the club drop to the bottom of the league standings and possibly even getting relegated to a lower division. So no pressure on manager Pep Guardiola and his players today as they try to stay afloat in the Champions League against Club Brugge. There are no bigger City supporters than Oasis's Gallagher brothers, who will try to roll with whatever happens today. Kickoff, 2 o'clock Central Time, and that's for all of the matches.
Sliding in the Oasis there. I like it.
Any chance we get, yeah.
All right, take care, Scott. Thank you.
You bet.
That's Scott Regehr with Morning Sports. Well, we have a sports story still ahead after the news. It's a competition sport of sorts, at least, and you can do it from your kitchen table. It requires no equipment except for a jigsaw puzzle. We're going to meet someone who's involved in speed puzzling. So I could never do that. Stay tuned. We're going to hear all about it. And just want to mention on the morning commute, if you do need us, 788-3093. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's minus 14, but we are going to warm up all the way to minus 4 in Winnipeg this afternoon. It is being called a catastrophic situation never before seen in Winnipeg. 10 people in Winnipeg's North Main area overdosed in 45 minutes on Sunday. Harm reduction and emergency crews were run off their feet starting around 2 o'clock that afternoon. Levi Foy is the executive director of Sunshine House. It runs the mobile overdose prevention site. They say crews were attending to the first person who overdosed at their site when a second person showed up.
On that second call, we had they had arrived, and by the time they had arrived, that individual had come to, but then another person had experienced the same event, and then it was just a cascade from there.
Foy says the drug in question appears to be brown down. They issued a drug alert warning people about the toxic drug. Documents show a Winnipeg surgeon has been banned from working at Grace Hospital. A confidential, respectful workplace decision leaked to CBC News says Dr. David Ames was accused of sexually harassing a nurse at that hospital about a year ago. Ames has denied the allegations. In October, an arbitrator hearing the case decided Ames couldn't work there, saying it was more likely than not the doctor made the alleged comments, and the doctor had made the nurse feel reduced to a sexual object in the workplace. Ames was previously suspended in 2022 after sending sexually explicit texts to a patient. Arthur Schaefer is an ethics professor at the University of Manitoba. He says this suspension is appropriate.
What this comes down to is that Dr. Ames has violated one of the fundamental tenets of being a professional physician. He's a threat to the doctor-patient relationship.
Ames lawyers and the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority have both declined comment. Progressive Conservative leadership candidate Abhi Khan says Manitoba should have more private delivery of publicly funded health care. Speaking at a PC leadership forum last night in Portage-la Prairie, the Fort White MLA advocated for more public-private partnerships in healthcare.
We have to think outside the box. We have to bring innovative ideas to healthcare. Here's just a little one that we're talking about tonight. Let's partner up with public-private partnerships. Let's create that capacity to serve Manitobans.
After the forum, Khan declined to identify an aspect of healthcare that could benefit from more private delivery. He says that will have to wait until he becomes PC leader. Khan is running for leader against Churchill hotelier Wally Dowdrich. Clear Lake cottage owners are facing a new reality. Zebra mussels are in the lake to stay. Parks Canada says it's not feasible to get rid of the mussels from the lake in Riding Mountain National Park. It had banned boats and other watercraft on the lake last summer, trying to stop the spread. But officials now say zebra mussels have been detected in other parts of the lake. Parks Canada says this year it plans to allow watercraft on Clear Lake on a one-boat, one-lake basis. Kyle Bazzillo of the Clear Lake Cabin Association says that's good news for many.
I've seen people that are boat owners and cabin owners up in Clear Lake, and they didn't even come out all summer because boating is a big part of their life, right? So this is huge news, and it's not quite back to normal because of the zebra mussels are there, but I think this is the right step to take, and this is the first step in getting back to normal.
You can hear more on this story in the next half hour right here on Information Radio. Housing advocates do not understand why the Granite Curling Club would oppose an affordable housing project next door. The club has started a petition to try to stop a city rezoning meeting, which would allow an 11-story apartment building on the club's parking lot. Lindsay McBain at the Right to Housing Coalition supports the plan, which has 30 units with rent geared to income. McBain says the project includes revenue sharing for the curling club.
The market units in this new development will create revenue, a portion of which is going to form an annuity that would go to the curling club, maintaining its viability over a very long period of time. So to me, from my current understanding, it seems like a win-win-win.
The University of Winnipeg Community Renewal Corporation is the developer. The West Kildonan Arena has been closed until further notice after a piece of machinery hit the outside of that building. The city-owned community-operated rink was shut down Monday after an inspection by a structural engineer. They identified concerns with the integrity of the wall where the damage happened and an emergency exit. Some hockey practices and games had to be cancelled. Brian Hewen is president of the Community Centre's board.
We're not happy, of course, no. We're running an arena, and for the local people, the kids and everything.
The city says the daycare in the community center was not affected and remains open. Well, it didn't look hopeful at the start, but then...
Here's Shifley, and he scores! Quick puck movement, Velarde to Shifley. The Jets have their first lead.
Mark Shifley in the second period there on TSN. After a dismal first period, Coach Scott Arneal knew the Habs were strong going in and says all the teams they're playing in this road trip are tough.
To be able to start it this way, first 10 minutes, not so much, but to get the win was huge.
The Jets are the first team in the NHL to reach 35 wins this season. Winnipeg now is tied with the Washington Capitals at the top of the NHL standings. And next up, Winnipeg heads to Boston to face the Bruins tomorrow night. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather Wells, thank you.
Thank you.
Heather in our news center this morning, 7:36 a.m. and Abby is here for a look at our regional forecast.
We're looking at, milder conditions in the southern part of the province today with much colder as we head north. In Winnipeg and the Red River Valley region, we're seeing temperatures around -14, mostly clear outside at this point. Today, we will see some clouds roll in later in the day. It gets breezy at some point, and then temperatures will be warming up to around -4. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region from Morden all the way down to the U.S. borders with temperatures around -11 at this time. Brandon -15, Dauphin -5, Gimli -18, DePauw and Flin Flon around -9 at this point. We're seeing at -22 in Thompson, and it is bitterly cold in Churchill at -33 with ice crystals, and the wind chill makes it feel like -46 this morning.
Oh,
bitterly cold.
Yeah, what a winter. All right, thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey, it sounded in the background of Abby talking there, you were on the traffic line, and it sounded like you slammed the phone down like, I don't want your stinking traffic tip.
No, it was more like, I don't want to interrupt Abby's weather. It was more so that I was like, ugh. Yeah.
Nothing urgent, though, this morning in traffic, actually.
No. The one call we've got is actually from Thomas, who was on Highway 16. He was saying that there's some icy patches there this morning, so go a little bit slow. And I'm actually looking at Manitoba 511 and actually kind of around Highway 16 area, Shoal Lake, Hamiota, Oakburn area that is being reported is covered, a lot of those highways. So that could mean some drifts, some icy patches. So be careful there if you're kind of in the south of Riding Mountain area around Russell, between Russell and Minnedosa there. Other than that, though, things are pretty smooth here in the city. I haven't heard of any major issues. But if you see something going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, for me, this is the sound of mental focus and relaxation. Can you hear what that is? People on YouTube can see what I'm doing. I'm just dropping puzzle pieces here in the studio. Puzzling requires focus and stamina and a competitive edge. It can be done solo or as a team, but it can also be done really fast. Not by me, but by my next guest. Speed puzzling is what we're going to be talking about next on the show. Today is National Puzzle Day, celebrated in the United States, but Canadians are joining in as well. And we have a competitive speed puzzler in studio with us this morning. Rebecca Waddell is here. She has a puzzle with her. She's going to show off some of her puzzling prowess, and we're going to talk about it first, and then we'll flip some pieces fast as lightning. Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to be here.
How
Thanks
long have you been puzzling overall? Like, when did you get into puzzles?
I've been doing puzzles for a long time, but during COVID, I really ramped up where there was nothing else to do. So I just would do a puzzle continually on the go. And that kind of led me into finding out more about speed puzzling and upping my game.
Where did you first hear about it? Did you see it online or something, or what?
My daughter told me to check out a YouTuber named Karen Puzzles, and she posts all about doing puzzles, and she was posting on competing in the United States in different speed puzzling competitions. So I figured Canada must have something. So I went online, found the Canadian Jigsaw Puzzle Association, which was just started in 2023, and that's kind of what led me to be competing online and in-person events.
How popular is it? Like, how many in-person events do you have to choose from, kind of thing, you know?
It's massively popular. At the World International Jigsaw Puzzling Competition, just over the last few years, the number of attendees has increased into the hundreds, thousands of people flying to Spain to compete. There's events across Canada. I'll be competing at the Nationals in Mississauga in May with my partner Lisa from Radium Hot Springs, BC. There's regionals, nationals, and then the online events are really popular too.
What does that mean with your partner?
I traveled to Edmonton last summer to compete in person, and I cast about on the internet to try and find a partner to participate in a pairs competition, and the teams and individuals. Yeah, and so I just randomly found Lisa from BC and Eliza and Amy from Alberta, and we put a team together, and we came in third in teams in the Edmonton regionals.
Yeah. Wow. When did you know you were really good at this? Like, where did you go from, like, looking at Karen Puzzles online to, like, saying, okay, I could do this?
Well, that was kind of the whole thing. I was like, I can be very competitive, and it was that kind of idea. Could I do this as fast as someone else? Could I beat someone? Could I practice? Can I practice strategies to make me faster? That idea of racing against someone really got me kind of into it.
How is it judged, and what is considered fast? Like, give us some parameters. Is it a 500-piece puzzle, 100-piece puzzle, and what would be the length of time? What's the parameter?
Okay, so in an individual competition, it's a 500-piece puzzle, and like the world record holder is 27 minutes.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was just a new record set in September.
Yeah.
But I'd say about 45 minutes would be a very fast time. My best time is 58 minutes.
You've done 58 minutes for a 500-piece puzzle?
Yeah.
Wow. Have you done it what's your best competition time? Or was that a competition time?
That was in a competition time.
Oh, good for you.
We came in third with our team at the Nationals. Yeah.
Is the time about the same, I guess, if you're in pairs? You got to find somebody then that matches your pace.
Oh, no, then it's way faster. Some can get it done in half an hour.
Are you both working on the same puzzle?
Yes.
Then? Okay, you're together on one puzzle. I wasn't sure if it was like 2 and 2 and you got to finish it.
No.
Synchronized puzzle.
And you're racing against other pairs that are doing the same puzzle. And you don't know what the puzzle is till you open the bag at the like 3, 2, 1, go, rip it open, see the puzzle, and start there. So you don't get time to look at it ahead of time either.
Got it. But you can look at the picture when you're doing it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So you are here obviously to do a bit of a mini demonstration, obviously. So where should we start? Should we start from pouring it out, or should we go for flipping, or what's a good...
So if you're in a race, first thing you do, because you're starting right, you got to rip the bag open, dump it out.
Okay.
First thing you want to do is just start flipping all your pieces.
Okay.
And as you flip, you want to pull your edge pieces to the side.
Okay.
This is something you can practice to get faster at, is just even like practice sorting out all the edges, or practice just flipping.
How are you flipped already? I flipped like 3 or something.
Yeah, well, I did start a little early, I guess.
Lies. She's like, maybe it's because I just told you I came third in a puzzling competition and you're just doing it casually.
And then you want to, while you're flipping, you don't want to just like daydream. You want to start looking and seeing, like right now I'm seeing yellow. I see this yellow part in the middle, or I see red. So I'm going to pull all the reds in one place, so then I can just kind of start putting it together as fast as possible.
Okay.
Okay. So, and you want to look for parts that kind of go together. Like, see, I've already got a few pieces together here.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And you just kind of keep going. You want to
So how much do you actually look at the picture? Are you like instinct?
I refer to the picture as needed. But yeah, like I would look for similarities in the puzzle first and refer to the puzzle as necessary if I was stuck on something.
What's your goal with this? Obviously, people, we can't have Rebecca do the whole puzzle here. So we're gonna give her a break here and let her talk to us more about it. Yeah. But what's your goal with this? How far would you like to take it?
Well, I'm competing in the Nationals in Mississauga. I will one day go to the world competition in Spain. It just so happens to be about the first week back to school, and I'm a teacher, so I may have to retire first. But I really just want to keep practicing, and I would love to be in the top 10 at a national competition, maybe even top 5. That would be my goal.
What do your students think of this?
They are pretty funny. I showed them a video of me on YouTube last year puzzling, and they were cheering. They're like, "Come on, Rebecca." And then it's like, well, it already happened. And one kid said, "Well, I'm not going to cheer for you. I'm going to cheer for Donna." I was like, well, maybe Donna needed more cheering. So. But they think it's pretty cool.
You want to shout out your school just because we're on?
Yeah, hi to Dufferin School and all my friends there. We're going to do some puzzles today in room 20 for International Day of Puzzling.
Love that. Before you go, I know you're also trying to bring puzzling to more people, just overall to share the joy. How are you doing that?
Well, I'm starting up a in-person group. We had a big puzzle swap at the end of November, and I got names of people that might be interested in doing speed puzzling. So that's going to be starting up. We also have events in person where you can get together and swap. So if you check out Winnipeg Puzzles Exchange on Facebook, that's where all those events are posted. And we actually have one at the St. Vital Library coming up in March where it's inside. You can come bring your puzzles, swap with friends, or check out the Canadian Jigsaw Puzzle Association Facebook page. If you're looking to try and get a hold of me, if you're in Manitoba and interested in joining in on the fun, I can be found there. And there's lots of events posted there.
We will check it out. And I'm certainly going to check out some of your videos where you complete a puzzle in like that time. It's so cool. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much. This is just a thrill.
Rebecca Waddell is a competitive speed puzzler here in Winnipeg. If you want to find out more or participate, as mentioned, one of the places you can visit is the Canadian Jigsaw Puzzle Association or the Winnipeg Puzzle Exchange. 7:46 a.m. the time, -14 the temperature. Thanks for joining us. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Man, it looks like spring on the overhead shot again today. If you're watching the show on YouTube, it just looks lovely out there. It does have that chill in the air today, but we're going to be -4. So before we turn back to more legit cold temperatures here in southern Manitoba, we do have that -4 with us today. Well, next on the show, U.S. President Donald Trump says the White House is on track to impose a 25% tariff on Canadian goods starting February 1st. So that's this weekend. That has politicians across the country encouraging Canadians to buy Canadian products as a countermeasure. But how easy is that? And do you think about it when you're making your purchases? We sent CBC's Jim Agapito out on a windy Winnipeg day to ask people about how their spending plans might change in the face of proposed Trump tariffs.
Ruth Moore.
Now, Ruth, are you currently following the tariff dispute between Canada and the United States?
Yes.
How does it make you feel?
Threatened. As long as the premiers are not 100%, and Alberta isn't, I'm not sure what the alternative is going to be to, tariffs on both sides. And it doesn't matter which way you look at it, it's not going to be good for them. It's not going to be good for us.
Robert Shaw.
Now, Robert, are you currently following the tariff dispute between Canada and the United States?
I'm closely following that, yes.
And why are you closely following it?
It's been a groundswell of interest in, unfortunately, the newly elected president in the states to the south. And unfortunately, with the change in government here and the withdrawal of the current prime minister, I'm concerned that prices are going to be increased. It's going to create some tariff wars between two really what's been long-standing countries that have supported and endorsed each other.
Free. Debray.
Are you following the current potential tariff war that will go on between Canada and the United States?
A little bit, kind of.
And how does that make you feel?
I don't really care. I think we'll be okay. The tariffs are probably a negotiation strategy from Trump. So I don't know. I think that's just his strategy. I don't think maybe they will put the tariffs on, but the tariffs aren't really the point. It's more just a negotiation strategy, I think.
Joan Green. I'm not impressed. I mean, it's ridiculous. They have all kinds of opinions about Trump, but none of them will be airable.
Has that made you alter the way that you buy product?
Oh, yes. I don't buy anything from the States. If there's any alternative at all, I don't buy anything from the States.
How long did you start doing this?
About 2 weeks ago. There's things that you can't get in grocery stores from Canada, like grapes, for instance. But I've been buying grapes from, I think, Peru, not California. And I've quit drinking orange juice. And, like that kind of thing.
I generally am careful about where and what I shop. Like in the neighborhood, the Exchange, for example, there's a lot of shops that are local. I think it's important to support that always. I think I will be careful about where I shop and what I purchase. I'm focused on Canadian products right now. I think it's important that people really think about that carefully. And there are products, of course, that come from the States. Awesome. Buy them if that's what you love, but also be mindful about shopping Canadian if you can.
Now, you did mention that it's causing some debate between you and maybe friends, family. What is the conversation like? What is that like?
The conversation is that she won't stop talking about it, and there's really nothing we can do about Trump being president of the United States. It's a done deal. We didn't have any control over it before it happened. We still don't. We do, however, have some control over who we vote in this country.
I think the government will change to Pierre Poilievre, and then I think he'll make things work out.
Do you think buying Canadian will help boost the economy?
It has to. I can't see how it doesn't.
Obviously, if you're buying Canadian-made products, it's going to help, the industries.
It could potentially. If nothing else, it may rethink people's shopping habits, which is always a good thing, being more mindful about prices and sources for the products that they're buying.
So going to make you rethink your habits? You can call the listener line 788-3205 if you want to weigh in on that. That was Jim Agapito from CBC out yesterday talking to folks. Minus 14 is the temperature in Winnipeg. It is minus 14 also in Brandon. Up in Thompson, light snow falling in minus 22. Well, next, let's take you over to another part of the province, talking about Clear Lake, where the battle between park staff and zebra mussels has raged for over a year now. Yesterday, park staff ultimately admitted defeat. In an update on their website, Riding Mountain National Park said after hearing input and advice from Indigenous advisors, the province, and leading scientific experts, it has determined that eradicating zebra mussels is not feasible. This past fall, park staff found hundreds of zebra mussels on the east end of the lake. That's far away from Boat Cove, which they originally hoped to contain, the zebra mussels. Was unsuccessful. Aaron McKay is an Anishinaabe from Rolling River First Nation. Let's briefly hear what he has to say. His people have lived around Clear Lake for generations.
It feels like I'm losing a piece of myself. I also feel like there's a family member who was diagnosed with some incurable illness, and we just have to watch them slowly pass away. My concern now goes to how can we prevent that spread of zebra mussels to the other water bodies.
Now, the park says there are no immediate concerns about the implications for water treatment infrastructure. It says its focus is to keep zebra mussels from spreading into other bodies of water. So that means now that the park plans to allow boats back on the lake this summer, but under what it calls a one boat, one lake approach. It basically means if you use your boat on one body of water, on Clear Lake, you don't use it anywhere else. You don't take it to another lake. Jackson Potter owns Outpost Campground Community near Clear Lake and was part of our live broadcast when we were out there actually in August and is with us via Zoom today. Hi there.
Hello, good morning.
How are you feeling about all this?
Certainly the writing's been on the wall for a little bit here around the zebra mussels being in the lake. And it is pretty disappointing, tough to deal with, but I think it is some good news that they are going to be allowing boats back on the water. It's an important part for a lot of people that are up there and a lot of community members. And so at least having that back. And yes, I think the one boat, one lake policy does balance a little bit the risk and still making sure that people can enjoy the water. But certainly there'll be lots of work ahead on mitigating some of the impacts there.
What do you foresee as some of the impacts could be, whether it's overall because there's zebra mussels or whether it's because of one boat, one lake? How might that affect people?
It's pretty tough to predict, the full impact of what that might be. I think one boat, one lake, that was a policy that we had in 2023, and we still saw lots of people signing up for that. Lots of people who were happy to commit to Clear Lake for the year. And so I think we'll still see that coming back. And people, cottage owners, residents, people that are, a pretty integral part of the community. I think that's a big part of what they like about Clear Lake, being able to enjoy the full experience. And it'll be good to be able to reassure them that that'll continue.
How have zebra mussels already impacted your business, Jackson, and others in the area that you're hearing about?
I think it's certainly created a lot of uncertainty, and it's difficult for people to want to commit to the area or invest in the area when there's a lot of uncertainty around what the future might look like. And so I think it's really about making sure that people can see what the long-term plans are for managing the zebra mussels, what it might mean for them, and providing that sense of security and people to invest in the area. Buy cottages or buy spots to or visit and stay, and buy businesses and invest in the community there. So I think just the level of uncertainty has certainly been felt among all business owners and a lot of the cottage residents as well, and local residents. So yeah, I think if we can get back to knowing what the long-term plan is and what we can expect and how we can work together on this, that'll certainly help things.
It's interesting thinking about August when there was still this hope when that curtain was going in. It was August 1st and hoping something might work there. But yeah, people then were already skeptical. I'm wondering what the overall sort of feeling is around how this all unfolded.
I mean, it's difficult to say. I know there was a lot of work and a lot of effort put into trying to mitigate this. It is something that, as far as I'm aware, has never been done before. Usually once zebra mussels are discovered, it's already too late. And so I think it was a pretty difficult undertaking, and they knew that, but felt it was worth it to try anyway. And I'm glad that there was that commitment to trying their best. But yeah, I think it was just a really difficult undertaking. So I'm not too sure what they could have done differently.
You were talking about wanting to hear from plans moving forward this summer. I mean, obviously, around Lake Winnipeg, they literally go out in some places and have to scrape these off the beach. You haven't really seen that at Clear Lake. What questions do you have about how things are going to be managed moving forward?
I mean, lots of questions. What can we expect some of those management strategies to look like? Will there be other restrictions put in place, or what can we expect in the long term? And I don't know that those questions have answers at the moment, but I am hoping that business owners, community members, residents can be brought into some of those conversations earlier on, and I know they are asking for, or they're giving people an opportunity to share input and provide feedback and thoughts for the Winter Adventure Weekend coming up there. So I think as long as those conversations continue to happen, that'll help to answer some of those questions.
Nice to see you via Zoom. Thank you very much for being part of the show today.
Thank you very much.
Jackson Potter owns the Outpost Campground community near Clear Lake. If you want to read more about zebra mussels and how they've overtaken the lake, you can read the article online. Let's go to Heather Wells now, who has our news headlines at 8:02.
Good morning. Well, it is being called a catastrophic situation never before seen in Winnipeg. 10 people in Winnipeg's North Main area overdosed in 45 minutes on Sunday. The harm reduction and emergency crews were run off their feet. And one person with that group says the drug in question appears to be brown down. And a drug alert warning people of that toxic drug has been issued. After almost 10 months without a contract, members of the Manitoba Association of Healthcare Professionals have voted overwhelmingly to strike. The 7,000 allied healthcare workers on the front lines of everything from diagnostic testing to surgeries. We're going to hear from their association's president in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Got a call from the commuter line. Southbound Main just before Marion, a collision, far left lane. Every lane is closed except for far right, just one to get through. Traffic is backed up almost as far as Portage, so that's a big issue. Still ahead, we're going to hear what both PC leadership candidates had to say at last night's leadership forum in Portage La Prairie, and we're going to talk about online dating.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
In the new movie I'm Still Here, Fernanda Torres plays Eunice Paiva, whose husband was tortured and killed by Brazil's military dictatorship. She'll be here to tell you the responsibility she feels to Eunice and to our country's future in telling this story.
It's like a woman who always fights the right fight.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
The role and the future of the CBC are under debate. The CBC has a new president who will have to tackle this and decide how the public broadcaster can serve as public and whether it will survive. The new CBC president, Marie-Philippe Bouchard, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Canada's military police are under investigation. An Ontario Superior Court judge found members tampered with evidence, showed bias, and acted beyond the scope of their jurisdiction. The judge says the misconduct was so egregious the court cannot continue to hear the case of an armed forces member charged with sexual assault. Nicole Williams has the story.
Never on this scale.
It's a case unlike any other attorney Austin Corbett has ever defended. His client, a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, charged with assaulting and sexually assaulting his ex-wife, a military reservist. Those charges now stayed because of military police misconduct during the investigation.
There was a lot missing. It took sort of months of work and repeated re-requests to slowly sort of piece together a lot of the missing pieces.
Military police started their investigation into allegations of assault in 2021. In a recent Superior Court decision, the judge says during that time they showed bias in favor of the complainant. They withheld and destroyed evidence, the judge calling investigators' misconduct egregious. Michelle Drapeau is an expert in military law.
I'm asking myself, how many other cases have these individuals been involved with?
Retired legal officer Rory Fowler says this investigation suggests what's needed is a public inquiry into military police operations.
So what this case represents is an object example of a failure over the course of many years to hold investigators accountable for misconduct.
The Office of the Canadian Forces Provost Marshal oversees military police in this country. It says it respects the judge's decision made in this case, and its Office of Professional Standards has launched its own investigation into what happened. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
At least 30 people are confirmed dead in a stampede in northern India. It happened during the Kumbh Mela festival, the world's largest religious gathering. Tens of millions of people became caught up in a massive crush. Several hundred people and others were injured. The CBC South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has more.
The chaos erupted in the early hours of Wednesday. A large crowd surged forward towards the waters considered holy, and hundreds of Hindu devotees scrambled to break away from the crush of people. Police rushed to the scene with officers carrying the injured out on stretchers. We were walking calmly and then there was so much pushing and shoving, Sarojini says, breaking into tears. There was no chance of escaping. My family was hurt. People kept stepping on us, this woman says, outside a temporary hospital. I made it out safely, but my mother has died. The main crowd surge happened where the Ganges and Yamuna rivers meet, a spot considered holy for devout Hindus, on the biggest day of the world's largest religious festival, with 100 million people expected to attend to take a bath in the waters in the belief it washes away their sins. Hours after the stampede, officials were still tiptoeing around a death toll. India's Prime Minister offered condolences for those who lost loved ones. But the state's Chief Minister, Yogi Adityanath, only said he hoped the injured would recover. He asked people to not believe in any negative rumors. Crowd management and safety was a big question heading into this year's Mahakumbh Mela, a 45-day festival of faith and devotion that was always expected to break attendance records. The last Mahakumbh also had a stampede on its biggest day, with 42 people killed in 2013. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
The streets of Goma are quiet today. Rwandan-backed M23 rebels are in control of eastern Congo's largest city, and they've seized its airport. Gunfire can be heard in the distance, but this man who lives in Goma says things are calmer now.
It was a bit frightening with the gunshots we were hearing. We were a bit scared, but as far as we could tell, it's already stabilized, despite the fact that there's no power. They've cut off our connection, so we're cut off from the world.
International concerns are growing over the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Goma. Now that rebels control the airport, aid may not make it into the region. Thousands of people have been forced to leave their homes. Hospitals in the area are overwhelmed with the injured after days of fighting. In just 3 days, it will be February 1st, the day U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to slap a 25% tariff on Canadian goods. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is traveling to Washington today to try to stop that. And Canada's premiers are about to meet with the Prime Minister to work on a backup plan. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau. And Janice, what do the premiers have in mind?
Marcia, the premiers met amongst themselves yesterday to coordinate, and sources told CBC News that while they discussed the idea of a tariff stimulus package, it's been just a hypothetical conversation so far. Nothing has been presented to the premiers yet. Donald Trump's threats are real. His concrete actions have yet to materialize. So there won't be precise numbers for anyone until people see what's hitting them. But BC Premier David Eby yesterday said both levels of government are reworking their fiscal plans to get ready.
British Columbia should know that we are preparing for the worst, and we're going to be in a position to support them alongside the federal government.
There are some things in the short term the federal government can do, even while Parliament's prorogued. Employment insurance, for example, that's your first line of defense in the event of mass layoffs. But if things erupt into retaliatory strikes and the federal books begin to balloon with extra tariff revenue, the House of Commons would need to approve how those billions are then divvied up across affected industries and workers. Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc was talking about that yesterday on our Calgary Colleagues West of Centre podcast.
The idea that Parliament should come together to support workers, businesses, regions of the country, absolutely. And any responsible government would want to be in a position to do that as quickly as possible.
But Janice, Parliament will still be prorogued on February 1st when this could all happen.
That's right. Hypothetically, if a tariff war escalates fast, your politicians are in a pickle here, so long as who's in charge remains in transition. Yesterday, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh appeared to be signaling there could be an openness to holding off on defeating the Liberal government just long enough to pass a relief package.
I've maintained my position that I'll be voting against the government at the earliest opportunity. If the Liberals are serious, though, about a plan that should be put in place to support workers, call the opposition leaders together.
The Bloc, however, remains wary this could be a trick to let the Liberals stay in power a bit longer. Conservatives wouldn't even answer a question about whether they'd support a relief package, continuing instead to accuse the Liberals of proroguing the House for selfish reasons.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Economists expect a quarter-point cut by the Bank of Canada later this hour, its first interest rate announcement of the year. If the central bank does announce its sixth rate cut, its key interest rate would drop to 3%. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will be in the hot seat today for his Senate confirmation hearing. Kennedy is U.S. President Donald Trump's pick to be Health and Human Services Secretary. It is one of the most powerful posts in the cabinet. But the hearing is not expected to be easy. Kennedy has been controversial for years. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. And Richard, what can we expect during today's hearing?
Yeah, I think we can expect some very pointed questions from Democrats and Republicans. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is one of the few Trump nominees who stoked anger from both parties. Democrats criticize his skepticism of vaccines against COVID, polio, measles, his potential conflicts of interest, while Republicans criticize his pro-choice views on abortion. And now Kennedy's own family. His cousin Caroline Kennedy made a rare public plea urging the Senate to deny his confirmation, calling him a predator who relishes in despair and violence. Take a listen.
Bobby is addicted to attention and power. Bobby preys on the desperation of parents of sick children, vaccinating his own kids while building a following hypocritically discouraging other parents from vaccinating theirs.
Now, more than 15,000 doctors signed a letter protesting Kennedy's nomination, saying he's not qualified to lead one of the most influential posts in government. Now, if he's confirmed as Health and Human Services Secretary, Kennedy would oversee powerful government agencies like the Center for Disease Control, the Food and Drug Administration, and the National Institutes of Health.
What are the chances he gets confirmed today?
Yeah, Kennedy's fate ultimately rests with Senate Republicans. He can only afford to lose 3 of their votes, presuming all Democrats unite against him. Now, so far, no Republican has publicly opposed him, but I suspect we'll get a better sense of their intentions by their questions at the confirmation hearing later today.
Thank you, Richard.
You bet.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, hey, everybody, Wednesday morning. Good morning and welcome to it. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team in Information Radio. Thanks for joining us. It's mostly cloudy in Winnipeg. It's minus 13 degrees. Do you have a traffic issue as well? This is southbound Maine. Corey's going to update us on that in just a minute here. Also, about last night, we're going to take you to a PC Leadership Forum that happened in Portage La Prairie. We're going to hear from Abhi Khan and Wally Dowdrich. They are the two in the race to be the new leader of Manitoba's Progressive Conservative Party, so stay tuned. We'll have that for you. Also, this half hour on the program, cell phones have changed the way that people interact with each other on a day-to-day basis, but we're going to hear about why some young people are breaking up with dating apps. That story from Communities in Focus at University of Manitoba. Gavin Axelrod, the reporter that's on that beat for the last couple of weeks, is going to be in with the story. But not before we check in with Heather Wells for other news that's developing. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, after almost 10 months without a contract, members of the Manitoba Association of Healthcare Professionals have voted overwhelmingly to strike. Now, that association represents 7,000 allied health workers who are on the front lines of everything from diagnostic testing to surgeries. It has been called a catastrophic situation never before seen in Winnipeg. 10 people in Winnipeg's North Main area overdosed in 45 minutes on Sunday. The drug in question appears to be brown down. A drug alert has been issued warning people of that toxic drug. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
All right, let's get into what's happening in the forecast. Abby, what's up?
The continuation of the mild condition and cloudy day, temperatures warming up to -5 in the southern and central parts of the province, though up north we're seeing colder temperatures with that wind chill still around -4 to 6 in Churchill. For Winnipeg and surrounding areas, -14 we are at this time. Cloudy conditions. The day will be mainly cloudy. Some light breeze will come in from the south this afternoon. We get to a high of -4, though as you start your day, the wind chill this morning feels like -24. And then tonight, some clearing around midnight. Tomorrow, it's going to be a sunny start and a mix of sun and clouds by the noon period. In other parts of the province, from the western part of the province all the way to the Interlake and Pimna Valley regions, we're seeing similar weather, similar conditions like Winnipeg, mild and it's going to be warming to around -5. But for today, a cloudy day, -4 in Winnipeg. Expect some clear conditions overnight and sunshine tomorrow.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
And now with your morning commute details, Corey's going to update what was developing on Maine.
Yeah, so southbound Maine, I heard maybe about 15 minutes or so ago that just before Marion, southbound Maine, so right after you come off the bridge there, the far left lane, there's been a collision, and the collision actually has all the lanes blocked starting from the left all the way until it's just that right lane that's open right now. And the person who called said it was actually backed up all the way near to Portage. So heads up there. Also, further up on Main Street, also going south, just before Inkster, in the curb, there's some construction going on. Heard from Kathy that in the curb and median lanes there's construction. So you're kind of funneled into the 2 middle lanes, and that's causing some traffic delays as well. And then one final update from the traveling Transconian on Marion going westbound. There's a stalled car in the curb lane right between Archibald and Dufresne Avenue. So keep left to get around that. If you hear anything else going on, do give me a call on the CBC commuter line, whether you're walking, biking, driving. Would love to hear from you. That number, 204-788-3093.
8:14 the time right now, and next on the show, just about everything happens these days through cell phones, as I mentioned, including dating. Users are just a swipe and a match away from potentially finding the love of their life. But as CBC's Gavin Axelrod shows us, some in the Gen Z world are breaking up with dating apps. And Gavin is in studio right now to talk about it. Hi there, good morning.
Morning, Marcy. Thanks for having me.
So why did you want to pursue this story?
Well, I'll admit, as a young guy in my 20s, the frustration with dating apps is something I've lived. But also, I started hearing from some friends of mine that they were looking at getting off the apps. Like, sometimes you match with someone, the conversation doesn't really go anywhere. Maybe you get ghosted and it doesn't work out the way you want. And I had been reading online, too, about people who were feeling burnt out from dating apps. So I started to wonder if it was me and my friends, maybe like how many other people out there are getting fed up with dating apps, and what some of their frustrations were. But before we continue, Marcy, have you ever used a dating app?
Me? Oh my gosh. No, I have not. Been married like 22 years, so they weren't really a thing back in the day. But I know so many people who absolutely, right? I know people who've found their life partners through dating apps, got married, or just, found friendships. But apparently, maybe they're not working so well.
So I'll show you on my phone here. I've got, I paused it. I paused my profile because I don't know, we got cameras in here now, so I don't want to show anybody. But I paused this is the dating app Hinge.
Yeah.
And what I like about Hinge is that it's kind of different than other dating apps where instead of just swiping on people, you can like their profile. Maybe you can leave a comment, but you can show a little bit of personality and get the conversation going. It offers you different prompts. Some of them are a little more serious. Some of them are fun. One of the ones you see a lot is you should not go out with me if, and then they fill in the blank. A popular answer for some reason is Disney adults. I don't know what people have against Disney adults, but you see that on there a lot. But anyway, so yeah, obviously it doesn't always work out, but I like that it gives you a chance to show that bit of personality rather than being a bit of just another profile on the stack. And so we've been working out of the University of Manitoba for our Communities in Focus program, like you had mentioned before, over the last couple of weeks. And we sort of thought, what better of a place to find tons of young people to speak to at once than the university. So I started asking people about their experiences with online dating, a lot of whom expressed frustration with them. Now, some people said the apps felt more like a game than a place to possibly find love. The first person I spoke to was 20-year-old Brooke Singbeal. She remembers the excitement of turning 18 and trying out the dating app Tinder. Now, that's where users swipe right to like each other, and when you swipe left, it indicates you're not so interested in someone. If two users like each other, they'll match, but it doesn't always work out so well.
It feels like a hot or not game. It's super weird. It feels like you're not actually deciding on real people. It's just these images that you're swiping through and deciding whether they're someone you would like or not based off of that.
How much pressure is there to really, up your game when it comes to your profile, given that that's what people are seeing?
Yeah, so I spoke to 18-year-old Ruby Murphy. She says she's still friends with some people she met on dating apps, but she doesn't think they're really a good place to find a long-term relationship. And she also says not everyone on the apps is always their true self.
People are very encouraged to invest in beauty products and to
present a view that's not 100% authentic to improve like their chances of getting a match.
We've already, it didn't take you long to find people who were skeptical about this or maybe not into it. So why are people still using the dating apps?
Yeah, I spoke to Neil MacArthur. He's a professor at the University of Manitoba. He teaches courses on things like sexual ethics and ethics and technology. Now, MacArthur says phones are partly to blame, but even if you want to put your phone away, it can be hard for people to see what opportunities are out there for them to make connections, especially as other social settings to find a partner are getting harder to come by.
We've seen a real hollowing out of the kinds of collective social spaces maybe that young people once had, just because, I think that the double whammy of people being on their phones and then the pandemic just sort of killed so much. The pandemic sort of laid waste to our social world in many ways.
What's the impact on a person when they're not meeting anyone on these apps?
So another student I spoke to, his name is Jeremiah Fagbalagun. He used to be on Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge, and he said it can be really disheartening when you don't actually get any matches.
It's pretty bad when you make, you put a lot into your profile, you put the right thing you want, and you still don't get a match. Most times you kind of doubt yourself. You think, is there something missing? Do I have to say the right words or have the right pictures?
And so Neil MacArthur, the professor I spoke to, says he knows there are downsides to the apps, but he's not ready to discount them entirely.
I think you can use them mindfully, I think you can use them ethically, and I think that you can use them to make connections that you would not otherwise make.
So we did have a bit of a happy ending to this story, kind of. Brooke Singbeil, who we spoke to, she's actually in a relationship these days, but with someone she previously knew and had met offline. She says she wouldn't recommend dating apps to people her age and actually encourages them to get out and talk to people more. And while dating apps may not be for everyone, MacArthur says it's all about striking a balance between putting yourself out there online and getting out there to try and find a partner the old-fashioned way.
Well, you are at U of M still today, so maybe if people are listening and you're a student, that you can come by and maybe chat with Gavin about the story. Thanks for bringing it to us this morning.
Of course, thanks for having me.
It's Gavin Axelrod, reporter with CBC Manitoba. As mentioned, he'll be at U of M the rest of the week. This is part of Communities in Focus. You can read his story on our website as well at cbc.ca/Manitoba. And I just want to say one more thing here. I just want to thank everybody yesterday who was at an event that was happening as part of Communities in Focus at U of M. This one wasn't about dating. This one was a discussion about what are the realities facing international students at U of M. So we had a bit of a sort of Q&A and town hall, and we had people we were interviewing and questions from the floor, and just learning together about the successes and challenges of being an international student in 2025. So really interesting, and we will air some of those pieces on all of our platforms in the days ahead.
Your neighborhood, your community, your country, your world, your news that matters, news that belongs to you. Your World Tonight, every night, 7 days a week on CBC Radio 1, on demand on the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
It is 8:21 right now, minus 13 in Winnipeg. And as I mentioned, the candidates in the race for the new leader of Manitoba's Progressive Conservative Party shared their visions at a leadership forum last night in Portage-la Prairie. PC MLA for Fort White, Abhi Khan, and Churchill hotelier Wally Dowdrich are the only two in the race. And they talked about how to grow the party and what the party would look like under their leadership. Both of them spoke to CBC's Bartley Kivas after the event. First, let's hear Bartley talking to Abhi Khan about why he wants more public-private partnerships in our healthcare system.
Well, specifically what I mean by that is that the current government is doing the exact definition of insanity. And that is doing the same thing that has been done over and over again, hoping for a different result. We need to think outside the box, we need to be creative, and we need to come up with ways that are actually going to deliver health care to Manitobans. It is unacceptable with the wait times we have right now, with the people leaving the country to get services. We have to help Manitobans now. And the way this current NDP government is not doing that.
Okay, but specifically what areas? More private surgical centers, more, what specific forms? Like, GPs right now are private medicine that are publicly paid for. Yeah. We do actually have a hybrid system. What specifically would be more private?
Yeah, so to your point, exactly. We currently have GPs that are in the private system that are billing the province. So we need to look at that model, say how does that work and how can we expand that? For specifics on that, you'll have to wait till after the leadership, until I become the leader of the PC party, and we can move forward on what that looks like. But fundamentally, what the NDP are doing is not helping Manitobans. They committed 100% on fixing healthcare. they have made healthcare worse under their watch. I am going to make things better under my leadership of the BC Party. And that means outside the box thinking, means helping and actually getting services to Manitobans. And more of those details will come as the campaign goes on.
That's PC leadership candidate and MLA for Fort Wayne, Abby Khan, with CBC's Bartley Kivas last night after a leadership forum that happened in Portage la Prairie. Now, during the forum, leadership candidate Wally Dowdrich mentioned his concerns about splintering, he said, within the party. Bartley asked him to elaborate on that.
If we lose the values of our party, the conservative values, there will be other people waiting in the wings of this province that want to start new parties. I've heard it. I've talked to people, the rank and file people across Manitoba, and that is what they'll do if we don't have a successful race based on conservative values.
Keystone Party started up and wanted to start up to the right of the Progressive Conservatives last time. They didn't end up getting that many candidates. Do you see specifically like a more red Tory and then more of a deep blue party forming against it?
I mean, there's several scenarios that could happen, but we don't want a place where vote splitting occurs. We've seen what happened on the conservative side with the Reform Party, eventually unifying and creating a new conservative party, but we were in the wilderness for 20 years. I don't want to be in the wilderness for 20 years.
That is PC leadership candidate and Churchill hotelier Wally Dowdrich speaking with CBC's Bartley Kivas after last night's PC leadership forum in Portage la Prairie. If you want to read more about what was said and what happened, you can go to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
When you have to leave everything behind,
you're just trying to find a way to stay here for a better life.
What are the real costs of making a new start?
I have faced so many hardships financially, emotionally, and physically.
A CBC News series looks at what it's really like for newcomers.
I am losing hope.
Welcome to Canada, the immigrant experience.
Prepare yourself because coming here is not that easy.
Everywhere you get CBC News.
We have an update on your morning commute now. Corey Funk's popped back in studio.
Yeah, just got a call from Julie. Another development. Southbound Salter, just before the bridge, that Slaw-Rebchuck bridge there. She just says it's really backed up right now. Not totally sure why. Backed up actually all the way to Selkirk. So might be something going on there. If you have any details on that, let me know. Still problems on southbound Main Street just before Marion. A collision has caused big backups in the far left lane. It's got lanes blocked all the way just to the right lane, which is the only lane that's open. Backed up all the way to Portage is the last I heard. If you have any updates on that, anything else you're seeing out there, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, from her upcoming debut album called River's Daughter, which is a blend of folk and roots, here's Kaylee Watts on CBC with East Wind.
There's a darkness. There's an ember in the east wind. Is it an echo or a calling? But is it calling without an answer? It ain't easy. Always wondering where you could be. But what it isn't always won't be. And what will be won't be there anymore. Doesn't mean everything all at once. Sometimes it's easier said than done. When you're trying to find the way. When you're trying to find the way. It's far from over when you arrived. You've just made it to the other side. When you're trying to find the way. When you're trying to find the way. There's a darkness. There's an ember in the east wind. Is when you're trying to find the way, when you're trying to find the way. Far from over when you've arrived, you just made it to the other side. When you're trying to find a way, when you're trying to find a way.
Kaylee Watts and East Wind on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. It's minus 13 still in Winnipeg. We've been pretty steady all morning with that. We're going to be around minus 4 for the daytime high. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at CBC. Thanks for being on the morning show with us. I want to thank the people who had items on the program today and worked on the interviews that you heard. Associate producers Chidi Akuma, Carmen Ponto, reporter Jim Agapito, and CBC reporter Gavin Axelrod. So big thanks to them for the programming today, as well as our leaders in unit, Leif Larson and Nellie Gonzalez. It's now time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. It is minus 13, and as Marcy mentioned, we are headed to that high today of minus 4. A string of overdoses in Winnipeg's North End on Sunday was like nothing crews at the mobile overdose prevention site had ever seen. 10 people overdosed on a toxic drug known as Brown Down between 2 and 3 o'clock that afternoon. Levi Foy is executive director at Sunshine House, which runs the mobile site. He says it started when they revived one person and suddenly a second arrived. As staff called for help from paramedics, a third person came into the site needing help.
If our team wasn't there, and if the paramedics weren't able to show up in a timely fashion, we would be looking at a lot worse outcomes. We'd be looking at outcomes probably never before seen in an overdose prevention site or a supervised consumption site in Canada, and that would be potentially death.
Foy says they did what they could in an RV in a parking lot, but a safe consumption site, he says, would have had medical staff on hand and space indoors for recovery. A Winnipeg surgeon has been banned from working at Grace Hospital. That's according to confidential documents obtained by CBC News. Dr. David Ames was accused of sexually harassing a nurse at that hospital almost a year ago. Ames denied the allegation made in a respectful workplace complaint. But an arbitrator hearing the case found it was more likely than not he made the alleged comments. In October, the arbitrator decided Ames could not work at Grace. Ames was previously suspended in 2022 after sending sexually explicit texts to a patient. Arthur Schaefer, ethics professor at the University of Manitoba, says the medical profession has no room for repeat misbehavior.
Protection of the public and protection of healthcare colleagues, fellow healthcare workers, should surely be a very high priority.
Ames lawyers and the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority have declined comment. After almost 10 months without a contract, members of the Manitoba Association of Healthcare Professionals have voted 96% in favor of striking. The association represents 7,000 allied health workers on the front lines of everything from diagnostic testing to surgeries. Association President Jason Linkletter says despite promises from the province to improve health care, it's not getting any better.
The level of disappointment on the front line is palpable. They really feel like the promises that have been made to them have not been kept. And quite frankly, employment contracts are a core function in healthcare.
Linkletter says his members have been without a contract since March of last year. He says they have yet to set a strike deadline. The Right to Housing Coalition is puzzled by opposition from the Granite Curling Club to an affordable housing plan. The club started a petition to try to stop a city rezoning meeting, which would allow an 11-story apartment building to be built on the club's parking lot. Housing advocate Lindsay McBain supports the plan, which has 30 units with rent geared to income.
It does seem like it's going to really meet the need of the lowest income people in our city. And that's where we always have a gap. The private market can't can't provide the sort of really, truly affordable units.
The University of Winnipeg Community Renewal Corporation is behind this project. McBain says a plan to share revenue with the curling club should be considered a win for all parties involved. Cottage owners in Clear Lake are disappointed zebra mussels are there to stay. Parks Canada admits it's not feasible to get rid of the invasive species at the lake in Riding Mountain National Park. The federal agency had banned watercraft on the lake last summer as part of an effort to stop the spread, but now it says zebra mussels have been detected in other parts of the lake. Kyle Bazzillo is a board member with the Clear Lake Cabin Association.
Unfortunately, zebra mussels are there, but I think this is the best decision, is to live with them now rather than still trying to pretend you're going to fight the war that you're not going to win.
Parks Canada says it plans to allow watercraft on Clear Lake this year on a one-boat, one-lake basis. And Bazzillo expects a lot of cabin owners will be happy they can have their boats in the lake again. Coming together for LA's fire victims.
Do you remember when it first started? September, love was changing the minds. September, while chasing the clouds away.
Earth, Wind and Fire, one of the bands taking part in the Fire Aid concert for victims of the devastating fires in the Los Angeles area. Billie Eilish, Lady Gaga, Alanis Morissette, and many others on the bill. Viewers can donate during the live event. It's available on most streaming services starting at 6 p.m. Pacific time, that is 8 Central Time, tomorrow night. It's always got to lift you up.
Right?
You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Turn that up again. Do you have more of it, or did you clip it? Oh, there it is. It's still there.
I've got so much of it.
Woo! I think
It's 2 minutes of happy.
Oh, you should just keep the 2 minutes of happy. We've got a minute and a half left in the show. All right.
So, and what happens now?
I don't know. We're going to do weather and traffic. You can keep the music going. We'll tell you when to fade it.
Okay.
Okay. Heather's our tech now for a sec. Abby, weather.
It's going to be a mild day in the southern part of the province, and it's colder up north. We're heading for a high of -4.
Corey Funk.
Set down Main Street just before Marion. Big backups all the way to Portage just because of a collision. The far left lane blocked everything except for the far right lane. Look out for that.
Happy birthday, Joni Nicolo. And thank you to Joni, Megan Ketchison, Heather Wells in our news center and tech duties as required. As well, big thanks to our team here in our Studio 15. Kevin Ipatebo is our YouTube producer, as well as Abby Adiyemi, our technical producer behind the board. Mr. Corey Funk, who does our commuter traffic and directs the show and does all kinds of things behind the scenes. And then Heather, going to take us out with the rest of the music till The Current comes on here on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Take care, be well, everyone, and take this joy into your day.